We now come to the Opposition Day motion on protections for children from online harms. We'll allow a few moments for the front benches to swap over. Perhaps members could continue their conversations outside the chamber rather than lurking. I call Munira Wilson to move the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I beg to move the motion tabled in my and my honourable friends' names on the order paper on protection for children from online harms. Madam Deputy Speaker, this afternoon is an opportunity for the House to come together to take urgent and meaningful action and legislate within weeks, not within months, not within years, but within weeks, to keep our children and our young people safe online. Whether that's protection from harmful social media, with AI chatbots, or addictive gaming. It's clear that we are at a tipping point now, with widespread public and indeed cross-party support for a cross-party approach for decisive action. Every parent across this country knows the threat social media poses to our children, to their mental health, to their physical health, to their sleep, and to their concentration. They have written in their thousands to every single MP in this House, and I want to take this opportunity to thank the 1,500 or so parents and carers in my Twickenham constituency who've written to me. And they are begging for a change in the law so that they can better protect their children. They are not abdicating parental responsibility, as some would like to suggest, but they are pleading with the government for help in providing the tools and the safeguards they need when faced with the might and the business models of enormous tech companies profiteering from our children's attention. Now, for me, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is personal. My husband and I fight the daily battle at home with our children, aged 11 and 7, on screen time, on what platforms and what games they can access. Peer pressure is overwhelming. For children, especially those just starting out on their secondary school journey, as my daughter recently has, desperate for belonging and connection, parents are torn. We are torn between ensuring our children are not left out of online spaces that we all too often struggle to understand ourselves and protecting our children. I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, it's time we sent a message loud and clear to Musk, to Zuckerberg, to the other big tech giants. If your platform spreads harmful content or relies on addictive and harmful algorithms, you should not be allowed anywhere near our children. And that's why Liberal Democrats have introduced a bill today that would bring forward a range of protections for children from online harms, including restricting access to harmful social media. Now, before I set out what we Liberal Democrats would ideally want to include in that bill, I want to emphasise that if this House were to support the motion before us on the order paper today, we would want to work cross-party to bring forward workable and effective legislation quickly, given there is support for action on all sides of the House. This is not about one party winning or owning this issue. This is about us, as politicians, as policymakers, and as parents coming together to protect our children, their safety and their well-being. I'd be delighted to give way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, first of all, can I commend the Honourable Lady for bringing this forward. Her devotion to this subject is well known in the House, and we thank her for it. Does the Honourable Lady also agree that perhaps when it comes to the role of education in schools and principals, in Northern Ireland the Minister, Paul Given, has introduced a pilot scheme to have phone-free schools. I had an event in my constituency on that very thing, but it's to stop children in school from being harassed and from understanding things that they should not be doing. So does the Honourable Lady agree when part of the policy and part of it that Lib Dems are trying to do, that should be part of it, phone-free schools to help our children as well.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's always a pleasure to give way to the Honourable Member for Strangford. First up on his interventions in this debate, I agree with him entirely, and I was going to touch on the point about phones in schools later, and I believe we'll be having a chance to actually vote on that specific measure shortly when the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill comes back to the House. So I'm just going to turn now, I've talked about the fact that we want to approach this in a cross-party way, but obviously I will turn now to what we on these Liberal Democrat benches would ideally like to see in that legislation. Yes, of course.
Thank you, and I thank the Honourable Lady, and she makes a case very personally and passionately about the harms to young people's mental health that we see from these predatory algorithms that the tech giants have created to create addictive content for children. And I think there is cross-party agreement, as she says, for us to look very carefully at how we protect children. I was on a call today with the campaign group 36 Months from Australia about how they're approaching this in Australia. But does she not agree that the right approach is to have a full public consultation, as is proposed, so that parents, schools, that we can get this right and make sure that we're learning from evidence, learning from places like Australia to protect our kids?
Lady, and I hope she won't mind me calling her my honourable friend, even though we're on opposite sides of the House, for that intervention. And I take that point, and I've heard that point expressed by the government, and I agree we do need to consult, but I think we should be consulting on how we implement some of these things, not whether we do or what we do, because I think there is general consensus. You look at every opinion poll out there, certainly when it comes to things like banning social media for under 16s and other measures, there is overwhelming public support, and there is cross-party support in this House, and as we've seen recently in the House of Lords as well, in the other place I should say. So for me, if there is a consultation, it should be how it's implemented, how these things are implemented, not whether we do it or which ones we seek to implement. But I will touch on the government's approach towards the end of my speech. So we Liberal Democrats would introduce a film-style classification system with social media rated at 16 as a default, and give Ofcom the powers to back up such a framework. This echoes the film and video classification system established in the 1980s, adapting a trusted framework for the digital age. Companies would be required to age-gate their platforms based on the harmfulness of their content, the addictiveness of their platform design, and the impact this can have on a child's mental health. I'll just say the next sentence, and I'm very happy to give way. The onus would be on social media companies to stop children from getting onto their platforms and take steps to make their apps safer in the meantime. I very happily give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I'm thankful to the Honourable Lady for giving way, and I'm sympathetic to all of the arguments she is making. But it does appear that we're about to have a second reading debate on an as yet unpublished bill, when the motion on the order paper is actually about whether or not we have a day for that second reading debate. And I'm just conscious, because I've been to the vote office, the bill itself is not actually available yet. So what are we actually debating this afternoon? And what is it that we intend, if we were to vote with the Honourable Lady this evening, what bill are we actually going to be asked to look at on the day in the future?
So it's very simple. As I've said, I want us to come together to have a cross-party consensus on what should be in that bill. I've heard what the Conservatives have to say. I know I'm about to set out what the Liberal Democrats have to say on this. I'd be keen to hear what government ministers have to say in terms of what they should be on the bill. That's why we don't have a bill yet, because we think that there's an opportunity to work together on this, because there's been suggestions that there is even party politicking on this issue. I don't think it's a party political issue. I think we all agree children's safety and children's well-being is a cross-party priority. So the idea is that we agree to move forward, to come together, to work cross-party on a bill we can all agree on, that hopefully we can get through Parliament very quickly and onto the statute books, starting to protect our children as soon as possible. Yeah.
I don't wish to make this a procedural debate, Madam Deputy Speaker, but the Honourable Lady did introduce a bill today for first reading. We're being asked to consider that bill for second reading on a future date. That bill is not available, so whilst I absolutely respect the Honourable Lady's approach for a cross-party consensus to design the bill, As I understand it, the bill is already written, and we're being asked today to give over government time in order for that bill to be debated on a second reading. So again, what are we debating today if the bill is not available but is written, and we're not going to have a second reading debate until sometime in March?
So we are debating today the principle of bringing forward legislation quickly. I know the government is saying that they want to bring forward legislation at some time in the future. We don't know when that is. I'm trying to put a time frame on it because we know that what's going to come back shortly from the other place in the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill is not going to be accepted by this House. So that's why I'm trying to find an opportunity for us all to come together to be able to get to a point that we all agree on. So this is about agreeing the principle that we should have legislation, primary legislation, sooner rather than later. And I'm happy to make time in my diary tomorrow to start those discussions. Thank you. Yeah. The other honourable gentleman wanted to give...
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank her for giving way. Look, she's making a really passionate case and spoke movingly about the debate she has within her own family and how to protect her own children. I recognise that. I have 2 young children myself. I think very carefully about what they look at online, and I worry about when they get older and how we're going to deal with that. She talks about age gating as the principle behind with which she wants to work. And what I'm concerned about is that we know that these algorithms are addictive. We know that they reinforce people's worst prejudices. What evidence is there that stops at 16? Is she not concerned that by simply focusing on age gating, that the pressure on social media companies to open up these algorithms and for us to be able to have a look at how that affects society more generally will diminish?
So I thank him for that intervention. I mean, I haven't said we should only focus on age gating, and as I continue through my speech, you'll hear about the other range of things that I think should be in any legislation that's brought forward quickly to protect our children. Age gating of certain platforms based on their harmfulness is a key principle that is would be part of this legislation and part of our proposals. But so are various other things that I will talk about in terms of tackling the addictiveness of algorithms that are so damaging to our children. So, where was I?
On that point with the Honourable Lady of Ware.
Yes, happy to.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. On the point that she was making before the other 2 interventions, I wanted to ask her about the register and the ranking of age appropriateness for content, because I have grave concerns. I know we've sat opposite each other on many occasions discussing this, about who is going to register those individual self-published bits of content, and who's going to manage it, who's going to pay for it, how would it actually work in practice?
I was just coming on to further expanding on that before I took the 2 interventions from her honourable friend. So if she'll allow me to continue, and if I haven't addressed her concern, she could perhaps intervene on me again. So now, if the platforms don't want to play ball, Ofcom would be given the powers to force them to do so or face serious consequences. And we believe this would mean a ban on harmful social media for under 16s, but family-friendly services such as Wikipedia or TripAdvisor would be available at a lower age, because those sites fall under the user-to-user definition that's currently in the Online Safety Act. But we know that the most harmful sites, those that host violence and pornography, even 16 could be too young to access those sorts of platforms. That's why our proposals would allow what we think are really harmful platforms such as X to be age-rated and age-gated up to 18. Now, and a harms-based approach like the one we're proposing today, Madam Deputy Speaker, is supported by 42 charities, including the likes of the NSPCC, Molly Rose Foundation and others, and would protect children from the worst of the web without breaking the parts of the internet that families actually rely on. And crucially, it is future-proof and could be applied to chatbots and games and other emerging technologies. Now, I welcome that the Conservative Opposition Day motion a few weeks ago, which we were unable to debate, moved towards the Liberal Democrats' nuanced approach to keep under 16s away from harmful social media. So I hope that they can support our motion today and this approach going forward, when unfortunately they were unable to do so in the other place, which was just a month ago. I'm very happy to give way.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. And she's right that we did bring a Opposition Day motion in Conservative time on the subject, but the difference between our motion and her motion is that there was a motion with proposals. And this afternoon she's asking us to debate a motion that does not mention the topic that's in the title of the bill, but merely to give the Liberal Democrats control of the order paper on March the 9th. So why did she not choose to bring a bill forward and allow this House to look at her proposals, have a solid and principled debate on it, before she asked us to give her control of the order paper on March the 9th?
Whilst you'd be giving me or the Liberal Democrats control of the order paper, I've made it abundantly clear that we would work together to bring forward legislation. So the Conservatives have proposals. The government is consulting on something, I'm not quite sure what, because they haven't published consultation yet. And we put forward proposals in the other place, which his party chose not to support, unfortunately. But I don't think we're actually that far apart. So we have published proposals in the other place. We would use that as a basis for discussion. The Technology Secretary has already told me and my honourable friend, the member for Harpenden and Berkhamsted, she'd happily work with us on our proposals. So there are proposals out there in the public domain. This is about the principle of legislating soon and quickly to bring forward legislation that we can all agree on to protect our children.
I am grateful to her, genuinely, for giving way, but I have to push this point again, that she has outlined that she has, her party have published proposals in the other place, but her party are called the Liberal Democrats, and this is a democratically elected chamber that should be debating a proposed bill from the Liberal Democrats on the day of their Opposition Day debate. I agree with her that we need urgent legislation, but why is she depriving members on all sides of this House detailed proposals that we can vote on, instead of giving them control of the order paper in a procedural motion that she's published on the 9th of March?
Well, all I can do is repeat myself again, that the thing is that I know if I had published all of these things that I'm laying out as a piece of legislation, probably all sides of the House would have voted it down. I have told the House that I am happy to come forward in a spirit of cooperation to draft something up together. So I'm going to try and move on now, because, as I say, I'm going to make some progress, because I think we've tested the procedural approach to death now. It's important that we reach a consensus on our approach and reject unworkable blanket bans that have been proposed elsewhere, that put enormous powers in the hands of an individual politician. Now, I don't think any of them are here, but given the Reform Party wants to scrap the Online Safety Act altogether, I shudder to think what potential future ministers might deem acceptable for our children if they are allowed to choose what our children and young people can access, which is what the amendment that is going to be coming through in the Children's Wellbeing Bill from the other place would allow the Secretary of State to do. Now, I'm happy to give way.
And in amongst the discussion around procedure, which is important in this place, I do fear we're missing kind of the nub of what she's trying to get to, which is that this is a nuanced space. This isn't a blanket, we say no to everything, and there are some people who are arguing that we should do nothing and that it should be just down to parents to do it. Would you agree with me that actually this thoughtful way that she is putting across, trying to get us all to come around this with the public, is the way we're going to create something that is future-proof, because so much of legislation in this area is chasing our tails, and this is an opportunity for us to get ahead of it for once.
I thank my honourable friend for her intervention, and that is indeed what we're trying to do, because actually just trying to put forward a blanket ban on a particular list of social media sites determined by any given Secretary of State at any given point in time is necessarily acting after the fact is not future-proof and not particularly effective, I would say, and subject to politicisation, and which is why our harms-based approach, which is what I would want to negotiate to try and get into legislation soon, would be future-proof and work to act on things like chatbots and games. And I know from the discussions we have at home how addictive games such as Roblox, for instance, can be. Now, we Liberal Democrats have long been pressing for a suite of measures that would make the online world safer and healthier for all. Now, one measure that could be implemented overnight would be to ban tech companies profiting from our children's attention by raising the age of digital data consent from 13 to 16. Now, this would end the hold that addictive algorithms have on children.
Point of order, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Point of order, Gareth Snell.
Because whilst the Honourable Lady is making an excellent point on the substance, it bears no resemblance to the motion on the order paper. So are you, as a chair, able to give me guidance on what is up for debate this afternoon, and if the Honourable Lady can point me to what she's debating now and where that sits in the motion in front of us?
For his point of order. What is clear is that there is a motion on the order paper on which members will presumably be asked to divide in due course. However, what that does not give is any detail of the proposed bill. But the motion on the order paper is orderly, and it will be up to members to decide how they wish to vote on that.
On a further point of order, Madam Deputy.
Point of order, Paul Holmes.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I'm grateful for your indulgence, and I suspect I will get the same answer as the honourable gentleman before me, but I have never in my 7 years in this House been in a situation where a motion outlines the timetable for a bill on Monday the 9th of March, the timings of proceedings and questions to be put on Monday the 9th of March, on consideration of Lord's amendments and messages on a subsequent day, of a bill that this House has not seen. So how can members in this House vote for a motion that allocates separate procedures around a bill that hasn't been tabled at this House? Madam Deputy Speaker, I want my constituents to know what the Liberal Democrats are proposing in this space, and the Honourable Lady's now elaborating on the floor of the House what she wants her policies to be, but she's asking us to vote for a bill that has not been tabled before this House, Madam Deputy Speaker. Therefore, can I have your advice on whether this motion should be going ahead if the House has not got a substantive bill to debate these procedural motions on?
I thank the honourable member for his point of order. The motion that is on the order paper is perfectly orderly, so members will be invited to vote on that, not on the substance of any bill that might come on the 9th of March. And I do think it is important that the House is clear on that. Point of order, Onwurah.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, for allowing this point of order. So it's further to that point of order in terms of how I can assess what is orderly in my contribution in this debate, given that the substance of the motion is about process. And to be frank with you, I don't want to speak about process, I want to speak about protection for children.
It's a motion to give consideration to. So, the motion is to give consideration to a bill on the specific matter which has been outlined on the order paper very clearly, protections for children from online harms. So can I reassure the Honourable Lady that any contribution she chooses to make on that matter would be in order? Munira Wilson.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And that's why what I'm setting out is what I would want to put forward as suggestions for that bill. But as she has helpfully pointed out, we would be dividing on whether there should be a bill very soon on the broad subject of protecting children from online harms. Now, the other thing that I would want to bring forward in any legislation would be a doom scrolling cap, which would end the infinite scroll feature on short-form online platforms for young people, limiting the amount of time for which children are pushed to TikTok-style video content to 2 hours, and for health alerts on social media platforms for under 18s. Now, just like cigarettes or alcohol, these addictive products carry well-documented risks, especially for young people. The evidence is clear that excessive use of these apps exposes children to mental health issues, to anxiety, sleep disruption, and to real harm to attention spans. And don't they deserve to know that? When we pick up a packet of cigarettes, we expect to be told about the harm that product will pose to our health. So why is social media the key driver of a crisis in our young people's mental health any different? Now, and given that young people themselves are saying that they want a break from the stress of social media at school, and given the impact of phones on children's concentration and focus, will the Education Secretary finally listen to her own children's minister and put the government's guidance on mobile phones in schools into law to give teachers and head teachers the backup and, crucially, the resources they need in order to restrict their use? That is also, I think, something that could be part of this bill if the government refuses to accept the amendment that will be coming from the other place in the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill. Now, I recognise the Technology Secretary has announced a consultation on children's online safety and also that she will be tabling an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill to enable further legislation to come forward on something at some point in the future. All as yet to be determined. Frankly, they're kicking the can down the road. And to quote Baroness Kidron in The Other Place, who's an expert and a campaigner on children's safety online, she said about the government's consultation, "It does not concern itself with the gaps in provision or enforcement of the Online Safety Act, nor the emerging or future threats that we repeatedly raise. It does not seek to speed up enforcement or establish why non-compliant companies are not named in Ofcom research or while they are being investigated. The consultation is entirely focused on 2 amendments that this House might send to the other House, which its backbenchers might agree to. The consultation's purpose is to stave off a backbench rebellion. It is not about child safety or governance, it is about party management. The UK's children deserve better than that." Now, that's not my words, Madam Deputy Speaker. That is the esteemed crossbench peer Baroness Kidron in The Other Place. Now,
the Honourable Lady give way.
I'm very happy to give way.
I thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. I had understood that her party was keen on public consultation, and there's clearly a lot of public concern over this very real problem of online harms and the need to protect children from it. So I am puzzled by the fact that she is seeking to control the parliamentary agenda in just a couple of weeks' time without any substantive proposals and rush through legislation without any consultation. If she's concerned about the scope of the consultation that the government has announced, why not try to amend the scope of that consultation, and why not emphasise the importance of parents in particular having their voices heard rather than rush through potentially probably quite flawed legislation if there is not sufficient time to ensure that everybody's voices are heard in this conversation. It feels like politicking, to be honest, rather than a substantive engagement with the details of the issue.
I'm sorry she feels that way, because we've brought forward a lot of these proposals previously, so it's not politicking. We've long been committed to this issue. And because a number of these things could be done tomorrow. They don't need to be consulted on. The age of digital data consent could be raised tomorrow without any further consultation. It's something that was set by European law. There was flexibility in what age it was set at. UK chose to set it at 13. A number of other countries have recently raised their age. Unfortunately, amendments to the data bill were rejected to do just that. I think the bit that probably does need consultation in how it would work would be how any sort of ban or restrictions on harmful social media would work. But I think we could legislate for the principle and consult on the operational detail of that. I don't think that's a problem. And I think on her point about making sure parents and young people's voices are heard, I think they have been heard loud and clear up and down the country. They have been pushing and pushing and pushing for this. And they are concerned that the consultation is just going to delay action further. Parents, teachers and young people are crying out for urgent action now. We need a smart approach that allows young people to benefit from the best of the internet whether that's learning or staying connected with their friends and family online, while properly tackling the harms it can cause. I've given way to him a couple of times. I'm just coming up to completing.
Will she give way just on that? I haven't intervened before. It was just specifically on the proposals that are being put forward by the Liberal Democrats, because I'm confused as to what they are. The proposals that have been laid out by the Honourable Lady are not the proposals that were moved in the House of Lords. Yeah. The House of Lords only talked about user-to-user services. It didn't talk about addictive online gaming, for example. Are we discussing a bill that is the proposals that were laid out in the House of Lords, or are they some new ethereal proposals that the Honourable Member is putting forward? I don't understand what this bill is going to be, because I was expecting when it was put forward today that we would actually see it, so we could discuss it.
I thank you for giving way. So the approach that we've taken on this harms-based framework that we proposed in the other place would apply to chatbots and gaming as well. But the
user-to-user services.
The point is, the point is, as I have already laid out, we would come together and come forward with proposals that we can all agree on. Now, as I've said already, the only consultation that should be taking... I'm very grateful that he wishes to help me out, but I suspect he doesn't have my best interests at heart when he said... I'm happy to take him on, then. The Honourable Member.
The Honourable Lady is being characteristically courteous in the way in which she's giving way, and I always have her best interests at heart. But she's right in her speech that she said that people are keen to be heard loud and clear. And she is in her own way, in a rightful way, setting out her position on the floor of the House today about legislation that she would want to see come before the House. But if she thinks that people have been heard loud and clear, can she tell this House whether the things that she has outlined today are in a drafted bill that was sitting somewhere within a safe, somewhere within Liberal Democrat HQ, and why she chose not to publish that this afternoon so that we could have a principled debate on her policy proposals?
Sorry, no. I wouldn't expect the Honourable Member to try and help me out. Look, all of the things I have mentioned, we have put forward at various points in both houses as amendments. So they have been tabled and drafted, albeit, I am happy to admit, they haven't been put together in one bill that I presented today, for which I apologise, Madam Deputy Speaker, on that procedural point, which I can see has upset many members. But all of these proposals that I've outlined today have been tabled in both this House and the other place as amendments to various bills, whether it's the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill or the Data Bill last year, or indeed both. Thank you. So, and just to reiterate, on the consultation point, I made this point before, but I reiterate it. I think the only consultation that we should be focusing on now is how these restrictions might work in practice, not whether they are needed at all, because I think the public has made their views pretty clear on that already. As have all the campaign groups, whether they support or oppose a blanket ban. I think there is real consensus, which is why, although I have been criticised for the way I've come forward without a bill, the whole point was I was trying to come forward to say, let's work together, because I think there is real cross-party consensus on this. On that point, honourable friend to the draft.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. There seems to be great confusion in the chamber today, even though the Liberal Democrats have set out their proposals quite clearly, time and again, in different places. And I find it fascinating that we've got opposition party today accusing us of politicking, when they probably agree with us on the substance of what we're proposing today, but are contorting themselves to find a way to not support the motion today. This motion is about urgency and about acting much more swiftly than the government is proposing, and I, for one, think that is a good thing.
I thank my honourable friend for that intervention, because that's exactly what we're seeking to do. We're trying to discuss the substance of this issue, because it's been a long time since this chamber has had a proper debate on these issues, and I think in a few weeks' time we will be discussing amendments that suggest a particular party's way forward. What we're saying is let's all come and discuss what we think are the right proposals and then go away and come forward with a piece of legislation that meets those needs and requirements of the public, of our children, of our young people and their parents and carers. So, we on these benches say once again to ministers and to the official opposition, we have a set of solutions. We'll work with you in the best interest of children. We need to act now. Vote with us today. Make time on the legislative agenda for this bill. If you don't want to make it a time, if the government doesn't want to make time for our bill, then perhaps they'll make time for their own bill. But we need one quickly. We stand ready to work cross-party to create a safer future that our children deserve. I was literally about to finish, but I will give way to the Honourable Lady.
I thank, and I will call her my honourable friend, for giving way on her last sentence. And she's made a powerful case for working cross-party, for hearing different perspectives, and for bringing forward change quickly. But I really would urge, that is the point of a consultation. How are we going to do this? Let's get all those views of parents, of schools and everyone else in through the consultation and come out with something that we can take forward, implement, that will be effective in the long term, not like the online safety bill, which took far too many years, but also not this proposal, which is bouncing us into something we don't even know what we're voting for. So with huge respect for my honourable friend, please let's use the consultation to do this.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention, and I just say gently to her that, look, although the Prime Minister has promised us legislation at some point following this consultation, first of all, it will be secondary legislation, which gets far less scrutiny than primary legislation. Secondly, I'm afraid his track record for U-turning on commitments is not great, let's face it. I have tried to be as consensual as possible and not make political jibes, but I mean, we've had 14 U-turns. He had said just a few months ago that he didn't want to bring in any sort of ban on harmful social media for under-16s because of his teenagers' experience. And then last week he made a speech saying because of his teenagers he did want to do that. So I'm not entirely sure which version of the Prime Minister's comments to believe. And so this is why I would like to try and press this issue to get the government to bring forward legislation sooner rather than later. And I think it needs to be primary legislation that we can all discuss, debate, amend and look at thoughtfully. But we need a clear and strong timetable on that now. One final intervention, then I shall finish and sit down.
Thank you. We all want to find a solution to online harms for children. We all want to protect children. I think in this House we wouldn't be in this debate today if we didn't care about children and protecting them. But the way to do that is to bring a bill forward outside of the chamber. We all consult on it. We have a long consultation period, and then we come forward with a bill. This is not the way procedurally that any bill is debated or given merit or even taken through the different stages of making it law. If the Liberal Democrats want to take this seriously, they should do it in the spirit of procedure in which a bill is taken forward, which we can all debate, which there is a long consultation process, and then we can take it forward together.
I thank the Honourable Lady for her intervention once again about procedure. I say to her gently that her party and other parties in the past have used this mechanism to try and force governments to come forward with legislation on a particular issue. I'm not going to give way again because I think we have tested this particular argument to death. I understand her concerns about procedure. It is not unheard of. The Labour Party did something similar on fracking when Liz Truss was Prime Minister a few years ago. I remember it well. I was in this place. She was as well, and we all voted on that. There was no substance to that bill, and they wanted to bring forward legislation. I'm going to come to an end now.
Point of order, Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is a procedural question. Given that the long title of the bill is not within this motion, does that mean that effectively any subject or theme can be subject to the bill if the order paper is seized on this day?
Can I thank him for that point of order, which I had actually anticipated might come at some point. And if he checks the order paper, he will see that under the motion paragraph on point D, it very specifically has to be an online services age restrictions bill that is brought forward on the 9th of March. Further point of order, Dr. Ben Spencer.
Thank you for clarification on that, Madam Deputy Speaker. Just from my understanding, because it's the short title but not the long title, and is it the case that the long title can be used to tag in, for example, any particular related fields that could expand the scope from the narrow one here?
Can I thank the honourable gentleman for his further point of order? And I think clarification on that point had best be sought from the Public Bill Office. But it is my understanding that any bill brought forward will have to cover online services age restriction. I appreciate the distinction he makes between the long and the short titles. Munira Wilson.
I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I mean, I am perplexed because I think there is support for restricting online harms and protecting our children on all sides of the House. And so I think there is support for the principle to bring forward legislation, albeit people are vexed about the procedural point. I understand that. I think, I fear there is some contorting to find a way to justify potentially voting against this, and I'm sorry to hear that, because we Liberal Democrats are ready to work cross-party to create a safer future that our children deserve, where they can flourish and thrive both in the online world and in the offline world. So I hope that colleagues across the chamber will support us today.
Point of order, Paul Holmes.
Speaker, I'm grateful to you allowing me to make this point of order, and members might be a bit jaded by me doing so, but I am a Democrat, and I do like this chamber working properly. Madam Deputy Speaker, can you clarify for me the procedural basis of the member for Twickenham asking the government to make government time for the space for this legislation, yet despite asking for government time, the consequences of voting for this motion to be accepted, and should this motion pass, the government won't be able to pick a time to which they would give this legislation. The Liberal Democrat motion would take over the order paper and force the government to accept their legislation on March the 9th with the procedures that are outlined. And also, Madam Deputy Speaker, can I ask you your guidance on the motion in question, which states that which makes a number of amendments to the order paper on that day, which is that no dilatory motion shall be made in relation to proceedings on the bill to which this order applies. The question on any such motion shall be put forthwith, and that only a designated member would be able to make any decision on the order in which a bill was to be taken, and that designated member is not under paragraph 19A, the leader of the second largest opposition party, and B, any other member acting on behalf of the leader of the second largest opposition party. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, despite the protestations of the Liberal Democrats that they want this to be a cross-party approach, actually, this is the Liberal Democrats taking over the order paper, giving their leader carte blanche to table what they like on that day on March the 9th, and does not give the government the opportunity to table legislation on a cross-party basis at a timing of their choosing. It has to happen under the jurisdiction of this motion put forward by the Liberal Democrats, doesn't it, Madam Deputy Speaker?
Yes.
If it agrees to this motion, then it gives the power set out in the motion to the
Can I thank the honourable member for his very long point of order? Yes, he's made the point that he's trying to be helpful. Can I just clarify? Firstly, it's the House's time, not the government time, but the powers given, as set out in this motion, are as he has outlined them. Could I further highlight that it is not without precedent for a debate on a motion taking over the order paper for a bill without the bill having been published? And I think last occurred on the 6th of February 2024, when there was an opposition motion tabled to take over the order paper to discuss ministerial severance reform, and that was a bill that had not yet been published. So it is not without precedent. However, he is absolutely correct in his understanding of what this motion would do were it to be passed by the House today. The question is, as on the order paper, hope we're all clear on that, can I call the Minister Kanishka Narayan?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is a pleasure to respond to this debate, not least to further my education in my personal passion area of parliamentary procedure. Let me begin by responding to the motion itself, and then I will turn to the substance of the debate. The honourable member for Twickenham will accept that no government could accept a motion such as that proposed by the Liberal Democrats today. The motion goes against the standing orders of this House, which state that the government, as elected by the people, controls the order paper, apart from specific exemptions such as opposition days. The motion would give the Liberal Democrats free rein to schedule the business on the 9th of March. They introduced a bill today, still not available to members across the House, and are asking the House to hand them control of the business to complete all stages within a day. That is no way to make complex changes to the law in this area. It is not just a procedural outrage, but, Madam Deputy Speaker, more than that, I am sorry to see the Liberal Democrats join yet again the Conservative Party in their usual coalition of putting political desperation on this question ahead of the interests of British children and families. I would urge the Liberal Democrats to forget this approach and to take part in the government's consultation, a true attempt at engaging across parties and across the country so that we can find the right solution for children and parents across the country. This government, I've barely started, I'm happy to give way shortly. This government has already set out a way forward which considers these vitally important issues in a responsible way and which allows for swift action in response. This is how we will give children the childhood they deserve and prepare them for the future. I'm happy to give way.
I don't know where he's been, but my inbox has been inundated with families, parents calling for action. We are responding to the request of our constituents to take action. Is the government not seeing the urgency in which we need to take action?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And in response to the honourable member, I would simply say that the government is seeing both urgency and responsibility in the correspondence we're receiving and the consultation we're engaging on, not the desperate lurch to a specific answer that the Liberal Democrats are exemplifying in this instance. I want to take this opportunity to set out the approach we are taking. I am happy to give way.
I really appreciate the Minister giving way. I would just say gently that I do believe that if you look back at our track record the last few years, we have worked really hard to actually put forward concrete proposals around putting online safety first. But there are really, we have tried to push that agenda. It's not like social media came yesterday. It was 20 years ago, 22 years ago that Facebook was launched. And it was actually the pressure from across the House that the government had put the consultation forward. So I just asked the Minister to gently say, actually, we are trying to work together and to continue working together in that vein.
Well, I thank the honourable member for that point, and I take very much her point on wanting to work together. That is exactly what the government is committed to. Not a question of whether we act, but how specifically we implement changes to secure our children's future. I would encourage her and the entire Liberal Democrat Party to engage with the consultation and to ensure that I might make a slight bit of progress, having given way twice to the Liberal Democrats in the short succession of one sentence. I want to be absolutely clear. It is crucial that we allow for a short, sharp consultation to allow the different parts of the debate to be heard, including, crucially, from the voices of children themselves, too often underrepresented in this debate. This is a complex area, and it is vital that we get it right. We have already announced that we will act both with speed and appropriate scrutiny to legislate based on the outcome of the consultation. Last month, the Secretary of State set out to this House that technology has huge potential for good, to create jobs, to drive growth, to transform our public services, and so much more. However, we have also been clear that in order to harness the potential benefits, parents need to have confidence that their children can benefit from the opportunities that the online world offers, ensuring that technology enriches children's lives, not harms them. Most children report benefits from being online, such as interacting with their peers, finding useful information, or learning a new skill. But we also know that there are concerns about children's online experience. This government has always been clear that the protection of children online is our top priority. The Online Safety Act introduced one of the most robust systems globally for protecting children from harm online. Last year, I'm happy to give way.
I very much thank the Minister for his remarks and would hope, as part of the consultation, also be listening to research The Born in Bradford study is a huge cohort study, and they've recently looked at social media use of 12 to 15-year-olds in the Bradford district. 3.36 hours per day of social media use, and real associations with increases in anxiety and depression. So will the Minister make sure that those harms that we already know about from social media and that research will be factored in as he makes decisions following the consultation to act swiftly to protect our children from harm?
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, can I firstly commend my honourable friend for her consistent commitment to evidence-based policy making in this place and much beyond it too, and I commit to her absolutely that both the specific study she mentioned, the Born in Bradford study, and the wider point she makes on engagement with research will be very much front of mind for the government as well. I'm happy to give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way. I'd just like to ask him, could he tell the House when the consultation is going to be launched?
Madam Deputy Speaker, we will be very glad to come to the House as soon as the consultation is launched. It will be very soon indeed. As we have said, members will expect not just a consultation. Well, I haven't committed to be debating the consultation today prior to having published it, and so perhaps the Liberal Democrats can take a lesson from that and follow appropriate procedure in this place. Madam Deputy Speaker, the illegal content and child safety duties came into effect last year. These duties represent a major milestone in protecting children from illegal and harmful content online, as well as helping them have age-appropriate online experiences. I'm happy to give way.
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Consultation and time frame is absolutely key here, because whilst we procrastinate, online harms is continuing. Our children are being put at risk, and I only have to just think of the statistics around online pornography and the fact that up to 50% of boys aged 11 to 13 have already viewed pornography, how this is influencing their minds on a daily basis with regards to relationships and how they conduct their business. Can he give this House an assurance that the consultation will come very, very soon to this place, and can he give timeframes thereafter following the consultation as to when we will see legislation brought before this House?
Madam Deputy Speaker, I can firstly confirm to the honourable member that the government has committed to acting robustly by the summer. This is about as short and sharp as a consultation can get, and I would also encourage her, instead of procrastinating on this question, to engage intensively with the process of consultation and the national conversation too. Madam Deputy Speaker, I mentioned illegal content duties as well as child safety duties. For example, under those, services now must conduct highly effective age assurance, precisely on the honourable member's point, to prevent children in the UK from encountering pornography, as well as content which encourages, promotes or provides instructions for self-harm, suicide or eating disorders. Platforms are also now legally required to put in place measures to protect children from other types of harmful content. This includes abusive or hateful content, bullying content and violent content. Happy to give way.
I thank the Minister for giving way, and I thank him for the decisive action he took over the Grock incident that we've had very recently. But just given the scope of the consultation, and when we're talking about online harms, I just wanted to flag the issue around content we have on YouTube, which is a video sharing platform that's not necessarily a social media platform, and the type of content on there that our children are consuming, whether it be the quick succession of images that is not very good for child development. And rather than the slow-paced stuff you get when you're watching a broadcaster. Will the consultation look at the quality of content on those platforms? Because not all screen time is equal. Some screen time can be quite dangerous for child development in general.
Well, can I thank my honourable friend for that point, because both the points she's raised, the scope of how we look at particular platforms and the functionalities that we look at, both are not just considered by the consultation, but deeply important. I was engaging with the Australian Minister on this just last week, understanding both their experiences on this and the uncertainty of getting those two right. That is exactly why the consultation has been an appropriate approach in this context. Where, Madam Deputy Speaker, services fail to comply with the duties in the Act, Ofcom's enforcement powers include fines up to £18 million or 10% of qualifying worldwide revenue. Ofcom has indicated it has issued financial penalties to 6 companies under the Online Safety Act amounting to over £3 million, and I can confirm to the House that just yesterday Ofcom announced that they have fined a porn company £1.35 million for failing to introduce proper age verification on its websites, the largest fine levied so far under the Online Safety Act. I welcome the strong action to protect children online. We have also always been clear that whilst the Online Safety Act provides the foundations, there is more to do to ensure that children live enriching online lives. Like all regulatory regimes, it must remain agile, This is all the more critical given that we're dealing with fast-moving technology. That is why this government has already taken a number of decisive steps to build on these protections. My right honourable friend, the Secretary of State's first act was to make online content that promotes self-harm and suicide a priority offence under the Online Safety Act. This means that platforms must take proactive steps to stop users seeing this content in the first place. If it does appear, platforms must minimise the time it is online. As well as this, both intimate image abuse and cyber flashing are now priority offences under the Online Safety Act. Last month, my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State, stood in this chamber and made it clear that the creation of non-consensual deepfakes on X is shocking, despicable, abhorrent. She confirmed that we would expedite legislation to criminalise the creation of non-consensual intimate images. I am pleased to confirm to the House that these have now come into effect earlier this month. This will also be designated as a priority offence under the Online Safety Act and complements the existing criminal offence for sharing or threatening to share a deepfake intimate image without consent. Alongside this, it was also announced that we will legislate to criminalise notification tools to make it illegal for companies to supply tools to be used as generators of non-consensual intimate images. And last week, we have gone further still. We have announced that we will now introduce a legal duty requiring tech companies to remove non-consensual intimate images within 48 hours of them being reported. These measures will provide real protection for women and girls online. However, we recognise the strength of feeling up and down the country, right across this House, shown not least in the debate today. We share the concern of many parents about the wider impact of social media and technology on children's well-being. The rapid growth of grassroots campaigns like Smartphone-Free Childhood highlights how concerned parents are about the pull of these technologies and what that means for their children. This includes the potential impacts on mental health, on sleep and on self-esteem. We have set out our commitment to supporting parents and children with these issues. We want to find solutions that genuinely support our children's well-being and to give parents the help they need as they guide children through online places safely. I'm happy to give way.
Any chance?
I thank the Minister for giving way. I've received contact from hundreds of parents in my constituency and indeed some young people sharing their huge concern about harm caused by engagement with social media, online harm. And so I fully understand the sense of urgency in the Chamber today and the desire for quick action. Now, the government said in January they would consult. They reiterated that commitment 10 days ago in February, and I understand the consultation is due to start in March. The Minister's talked about bringing measures through before the summer. Can he commit to acting with real urgency, bring that consultation forward? What is the delay? And will he commit to bringing legislation by the summer?
The Honourable Lady has repeatedly made very long interventions. It would always have been open to her to attend the opening of the debate and speak in it. Minister.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I totally agree with the honourable member in asking for urgency, and can I assure her that, one, the government will act by the summer in robustly responding to the consultation. Two, of course, we have been focused on getting the consultation right, not just for the wider public, but ensuring it's designed for young people's engagement, which requires particular design features. And three, that we're not waiting for the launch of the consultation for the national conversation. I have been in schools, I've been with parents, the Secretary of State has, ministers across government have as well, and so the conversation has very much started. The consultation, I'm sure, is imminent too. Madam Deputy Speaker, whilst there is consensus that problems remain, there is not yet consensus on the best way to address them. That is why last month the government announced that we will be launching our short, sharp consultation and national conversation on further measures. We recognise that while some people support age restrictions on social media for children, there are diverse views both on the what and the how. Prominent voices in this debate, the Molly Rose Foundation, the NSPCC, are concerned that blunt age limits might not be the right approach and risks doing more harm than good. And even among those who support age limits, there are differing views on the ways to do it, including which service restrictions should apply to. These views are worthy of consideration, but we need to consider them properly and responsibly. We owe that to our children. That is why the consultation approach is the responsible path forward to look at these issues, considering in a swift and evidence-based way the full range of implications, the most effective way of protecting children and enhancing their lives online. We will consult with parents, the organisations representing children and bereaved families, tech companies, and crucially, with children and young people themselves. None of this will be allowed under the motion being considered today. This consultation, backed by the national conversation, will identify the next steps in our plan to boost and protect children's well-being online. The consultation will include the exploring of options of banning social media for children below a certain age, but as well as a range of other measures. This will include gathering views and evidence on options such as restricting access to addictive functionalities, understanding what we can do better to support parents in navigating their children's digital lives, and we will also explore if we should raise the digital age of consent to give parents more control of how their children's data is used and how existing laws around age verification could be better enforced. I'm happy to give away.
I thank the Minister for giving way. He's making lots of observations about the consultation that's going to go ahead and what's going to be in it, how long it's going to take. What we do not know is when will he commit to bringing legislation to this House to act against social media.
Well, I'm happy to repeat to the Honourable Member the commitment of this Government, which is that we will act by the summer. This is about as short and sharp as a consultation period gets. The Online Safety Act took 7 years. This is a quarter that we're simply asking for to make sure that young people, parents, families are properly heard across the country.
I thank him for giving way again. I understand the consultation, but what about actual legislation?
I will simply repeat the point I've made, which is we are going to act by the summer. We have already sought permissive powers to ensure that the Government is able to act through rapid legislation on the outcome of the consultation. I hope the combination of those two commitments gives the Honourable Member some assurance. Madam Deputy Speaker, the engagement in the consultation will take place alongside working with counterparts and monitoring developments in Australia on their social media ban for under-16s to share learnings and best practice. We are steadfast in our belief that the right way to deliver the next steps to protect our children online is to be led by the evidence through our short, sharp 3-month consultation. Last week, I'm happy to give way.
The Minister just said they'd already sought permissive powers. I understand that they're going to move an amendment in lieu to the Children Wellbeing in Schools Bill. I'm not aware that that has been published yet, not least sought from the House. When will that be published so that we can see what those permissive powers are supposed to be?
I thank the Honourable Member for that point. I commit we're going to try and do that as soon as possible. You shall be aware that the legislative process there is very tight already, given the process is going through, and so I will come back to her and the House with the wording of the motion as soon as possible as well. Last week, the Secretary of State confirmed, as I just mentioned, that we will take new legal powers to allow us to act quickly on the outcomes of the consultation, delivering on our promises to parents, and as I just mentioned, we will make sure that the wording of that is presented to the House at the earliest opportunity. We also recognise the importance of parliamentary scrutiny and the expertise that parliamentarians in both Houses provide. We have already committed that when regulations are brought forward, they will be debated on the floor of the House and there will be vote in both Houses, ensuring proper scrutiny. We're clear that it is not if we will act, but what type of action we will take, ensuring that we do so effectively, in lockstep with our children and in the interest of British families.
Shadow Secretary of State, Julia Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Now, today we're debating something that's very important, a vital subject, which is the protection of children from online harms. And I commend the Honourable Lady for Twickenham for what I think was a very heartfelt speech, but I fear that her good intent has been rather thrown under the bus by her party leadership. Setting aside the importance of this subject, let's look at the method, and it's a point that's been raised rather expertly from across the House. Today, the Liberal Democrats are doing what they do best, slightly nutty stunts. With the menace of Captain Mannering, they are attempting to seize control of the order paper and effectively declare themselves not only government for the day, but rulers of the internet with their online services bill, which is very, very loosely defined. It is a gimmick, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's the parliamentary equivalent of boinging in the chamber from a giant bungee. Though the Honourable Lady for Twickenham has put a little bit of flesh on the bone in her speech, the motion itself simply requests the power to barge through this House with a blank cheque bill for which we have no details, and in so doing let the government benches clean off the hook. And it's all gone a bit Benny Hill. And it's a great shame, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it's a distraction, given that the moment of truth on social media for children is coming to us imminently. And they know that from the panicked recess briefings that the Prime Minister has been caught on the hop on an issue that is of deep concern to families, children, teachers and communities across this country. Before too long, the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill will return to this House and members will have the chance to vote on a credible proposition, an amendment tabled by the Noble Lord Nash, that no child under the age of 16 should have access to harmful social media. Certainly.
If this is the Conservative stance, given the online safety bill went through so long in consideration. It was even referred back to committee, which no bill had been done in 20 years. Why did they not ban social media for under-16s in that bill when they were in government?
Well,
Julia Lopez.
It's a Conservative amendment in the Lords which has actually gained cross-party support, so it will be coming back to us. But she raised an important point about why it was not brought in the Online Safety Act. And that was an act that tried to do many, many things. In many ways, it took so long because it risked becoming a Christmas tree bill, and many good causes were hung off it. And that did cause challenges. I think that as the debate has moved on, we've realised that it is not just about illegal content that children are being exposed to. It's not simply about some of the things that the Online Safety Act was trying to change. There is an issue in general about children being in this space. There are addictive algorithms. This is not just about, as I say, illegal material. It's about the fact that it's changing how they are thinking, it's changing how they are interacting. And maybe we have to stand back as a society and say this is simply not the right place for children to be. We can create adult online spaces, and for children we think that there are other ways in which they should be interacting with the world. Certainly.
You talk about the Online Safety Act. Do you think the fact that the leader... Sorry, apologies. The Honourable Member talks about the Online Safety Act and what happened under the Conservatives. Do you think the fact that the leader... apologies. Does she think that the fact that the leader of the opposition actually tried to water down that bill and talked about the fact that we do not legislate for feelings has anything to do with the fact that actually has been kicked down the can and we are where we are and haven't made the progress that we need to?
Julia Lopez.
There were very real and important debates that were going on in the passage of that bill about legal but harmful material and whether people should be able to speak freely in the passage in the online environment. And what we are seeking to do in the way in which we're approaching this issue is to create space where adults can speak freely, but to accept that children should not be in some of these spaces. And that was the point that the leader of the opposition at the time was trying to make. We were moving very dangerously into the realms of free speech, and it is not for an online regulator to start telling people what they can and cannot say online when it is not something that is illegal to speak of in the real world. And that was the challenge that we had got ourselves into as a government, and that's why we changed some of the approach that we were taking to the Online Safety Act. And I appreciate that the concerns that are being raised. I'm trying to answer them as honestly and as straightforwardly as I can. But it's at the point, as I say, when it comes to the Nash Amendment in a few weeks' time, that this House will have its opportunity to make an unequivocal statement of principle that when we believe that something is harming children at scale, we accept that it is insufficient to leave the status quo unchallenged or simply to commission a consultation. Especially, and it's a point that's been made, a consultation to which this government has provided absolutely no political direction or view. A consultation that has been much trailed, but still not actually launched. Because in truth, this consultation wasn't ready. It was a mechanism to get the Prime Minister out of another of his tight fixes. Now, the Tech Secretary may be very good at emoting, at telling us all how impatient she is for change, about how she cares, and indeed for how many years she has cared. But when she made her statement on social media for children in this chamber a few weeks ago, she said nothing about what the government would actually do beyond seeking more time to take a position. And I commend the Honourable Lady for Twickenham for pointing this out. And I do have sympathy with why she is trying to bring this mechanism here today, because we are all trying to eke out what the government is actually seeking to do. I mean, it was extraordinary listening to the government speaker, the government minister, who said with great sincerity, "We will act robustly in responding to a consultation." What does he actually believe? What does the government think we should actually do on this issue? Because nobody has a clue. They're talking about a huge range of things that could possibly be done, but there is no... It is for a government to provide political direction. It is not for a government to seek consensus. It is for a government to take a position, to take a view, not to try... It's for government to it's for government to have opinions. It's for government to have policy positions. It is not for a government to try and make sure that everybody in this House agrees. I think it's pathetic to see the Labour benches getting all out of their tree about this.
Honestly, I sincerely thank her for giving way. When we talk about the consultation, it's not about necessarily seeking consensus in this place, it's seeking consensus with the parents and the children, the people outside of this place.
Yeah.
And just on the idea of banning social media, I think, I think that is a good approach, but this isn't just about that, is it? It's also about the screens that our kids are on, the time that they're spending on it, and the quality of that. And that's what this is about. It's about having a digital childhood that we can all get behind and support.
I can agree with that. The point I was making is that this government is trying to suggest that a consensus can be found on all of this in the absence of the government having a policy position. It is talking about consultation. What on earth is it consulting on? Nobody has a clue. They have not been able to say anything about what they actually want to do, because this is a Prime Minister who has no opinions. And this is why he's in such deep trouble. And the Labour benches can get all up out of their tree and all uppity about it, but no. The Prime Minister is being blown around like a paper bag on this issue. Everybody knows it. First of all, he was saying that his children didn't want to ban social media. Now he's saying his children are the reason he wishes to ban social media. He said there's going to be a consultation. One hasn't materialised. What does this man actually think?
Certainly. I'm glad that the Honourable Member has been very clear that her position is the Lord's Amendment that is coming through, that is suggesting to ban social media. Is she aware that it wouldn't apply in Scotland? The Lord's Amendment that is written, that's coming here, does not apply in Scotland, because the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, territorial extent, apart from one clause, does not apply to Scotland. So I take it her position is that she only wants a social media ban for children who don't live in Scotland.
Well, I'm sure the applicability of this legislation in Scotland is something that can be debated when we have the opportunity, when the bill comes before the House. Now, to give them credit, many Labour MPs understand the fact that there is an absence of any position from the government, and they're not going to be taking out their foot off the pedal. And I suspect many may have the guts to speak out today, although perhaps not. Those MPs recognised immediately that a consultation is a mechanism for delay, a delay that goes beyond a summer and into another parliamentary year before the sniff of legislation. And that holding position is now falling apart, as we've seen from the Minister here today. And now it's the threat of a very large group of Labour MPs backing the Conservative Lord's Amendment that is pushing this government into action. It's government by rebellion. So please, we ask of the Liberal Democrats, let us not be distracted from that moment of truth which is coming up, when we hope there will be cross-party support for the Noble Lord's Amendment. For too long, the internet has been treated as a space that cannot be governed. It has functioned like a pioneer society, with extraordinary opportunity but minimal rules. But pioneer societies, after improvising customs, eventually retrofit themselves with rules to sustain societies, often after hard-won experience and dispute. That is the process through which we are now going, and we are realising that as that online society was built, we were not vigilant enough when it came to protecting childhood. We weren't. We did not recognise that this new territory would bleed into the old world. The Minister's shouting from his chair that I'm embarrassing myself. We as a government brought forward the Online Safety Act, but there are gaps in there. And we've taken a clear position now as an opposition party that we think that children should not be on social media. And he's looking very angry. But what is his view? Can he stand up here and tell us what his personal view is as the Minister with responsibility? What does he think should be done on this before he launched his consultation with such earnestness? Someone tell us. Would you like to tell us?
Could I just be helpful? There's been a lot of help this afternoon. The Minister hasn't asked to intervene. The Honourable Lady can't force him to intervene on her. Julia Lopez.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was pointing out that the Minister has no manners. He wishes to shout from his sedentary position. I sat there listening and waiting to see if I could decipher in his very long and self-regarding diatribe whether he actually has any opinions. But it turns out he doesn't. But he's very comfortable to sit on the bench and chunter away at me. See, he says again, I'm such an embarrassment. Certainly.
Snell.
Give her a moment. Because I've listened to what she said, but I was talking to one 15-year-old last week who said to me, we have no youth clubs. If I go on the street, I don't feel safe, and I get told I'm a nuisance. So I come home, and I interact with my friends online, and I'm told I can't do that. So I'm not sure what the right answer is, and I sometimes think not knowing the answer is as good sometimes as having absolute certainty all the time about everything. So what would she say to that 15-year-old about what the outcome is for her? Because she's asking what she can do. How can she socialise with her friends? And we don't have an answer to that yet. So what is the party opposite offering?
Leah Lopez.
I don't think the answer, and I respect his intervention for its politeness, I don't think the answer is to suddenly encourage all children who are finding it hard to find purposeful and meaningful activities in the real world to retreat to their bedrooms. And I think that this is one of the challenges we've seen, that children have felt that the online space is the most stimulating for them. And unfortunately, that has led to an even greater retraction from the real world. And I think that we can all recognise that has been a negative for society. Sorry, was he for? Oh, okay. So I shall move on. Certainly.
Way. I think she's being very clear that she wished the government had just charged forward in some direction or whatever. I've had hundreds of constituents email me about this from various different perspectives and with various different workability concerns about certain solutions. I'd like to listen to them, and I think it would be really helpful if the opposition parties could try to do likewise, engage with this process, rather than just kind of criticise whatever approach we try to take.
Julia Lopez.
I appreciate where he's coming from. I don't think it's wrong to seek evidence, to ask people for views. I don't think that's wrong. But the Prime Minister should be honest about what he wants to do. And the problem is that he has been floating around with various different opinions, and he's been buffeted by Labour MPs and by opposition and by others. And if he doesn't think that this is the right approach, then he should feel confident in saying so. He said a whole range of different things about this. The government is seeking to launch a consultation, but what it precisely is being consulted on, nobody actually knows. And I think if Labour MPs were honest with themselves, they would recognise that. It's the very reason why I suspect in rooms with party whips, there are very serious conversations going on saying, well, actually, we would like to know what the Prime Minister does think about this issue, because we're not convinced by this consultation. We think it's kicking an issue into the long grass. We're worried about the length of time that's going to mean in terms of before we get legislation to protect children from various different challenges online. And that's the very reason why the Minister is standing before you today saying, actually, we are probably going to do something very definitely maybe in the summer. And the reason he's saying that is because the pressure is growing amongst Labour MPs. Now, this is what's being briefed out, that they're going to actually bring forward amendments to the bill because they're being buffeted into it. And this is the problem. Nobody knows what this Prime Minister believes. And this is why on every single issue that's happening with the government at the moment, despite the very large Labour majority, this Prime Minister is being buffeted around. That is the problem, certainly.
I'm very much enjoying her speech, and I'm wondering why she therefore cannot support our motion this evening.
Julia Lopez.
I think I said out clearly at the beginning of my speech why I don't think we can support the motion, which is effectively a blank cheque. Nobody actually knows, notwithstanding the fact that the Honourable Lady has tried to set it out in her speech, nobody actually knows what the Lib Dems are trying to do here. The proposal before us at the moment is that the Liberal Democrats take control of the order paper and then can say whatever they might like on internet governance. I'm sorry, I don't think that is the way to conduct yourself in Parliament. I think there have to be clearer proposals, certainly.
Because I agree on this point with the Honourable Lady, because the other problem is if you read the motion, it caps the amount of debate at 4 hours, 2 hours for the second reading debate, and then 2 hours for the commencement of committee and third reading. Now, this presumably is going to have to be a meaty, multi-clause bill to deal with a complex issue as an internet governance regulation, all of which will be unamendable by this place because of the timescales available, all of which the line-by-line scrutiny would happen in a committee stage, and most of those amendments that get tabled will fall because there won't be time for members to propose them. So this isn't some sort of solution that brings consensus. It is a Lib Dem railroad of a really complex issue with policies that they can't get through in conventional manners.
Julia Lopez.
Naturally, I agree with him wholeheartedly on the points that he makes. But it's true that until now we have implicitly decided that childhood must simply adapt to an environment that we as adults find totally overwhelming, undermining of our own sense of self and completely irresistible. And we have been exposing our children to this place of no settled social rules where that exposure is constant and the boundaries are porous and responsibility is diffuse. Behaviour that would never be tolerated offline is normalised, monetised, and then algorithmically amplified. Now, the Online Safety Act, which we've discussed already, has been a step forward in trying to wrest back control, but it is, of course, an imperfect one. It focuses primarily on illegal content. It seeks to keep the most extreme material offline. It introduces age gating for pornography and other over 18 content, and that work does matter. But the problem before us today goes well beyond illegality and explicit material. And there are also too many concerns about the complexity, both in the implementation and in intent, when it comes to policing content. So the central question is not just what children see, it is how social media works. Social media platforms are addictive by design. Their algorithms are engineered to maximise engagement and stickiness. They reward outrage, comparison, emotional intensity, competition and repetition. They draw children away from purposeful activity and into feedback loops that erode attention and resilience. Now, not all platforms operate like this globally, funnily enough. The Chinese version of TikTok is time-limited and feeds children content of scientific or patriotic value. In the West, it is emotional arousal that is fed to our kids. Children are not simply consuming content, they are being shaped by the environment itself. It's happening when their brains are still developing. Their impulse control, their emotional regulation, their ability to assess risk are not the same as adults. We recognise this everywhere else in law, in alcohol limits, in safeguarding rules, and in age of consent protections. Yet online, we decided to suspend that logic, and the consequences are increasingly visible. Certainly.
Thank you for giving way, and I'm new to this place and clearly still learning, but I was just wondering, why then were things in the Online Safety Bill watered down, things around designing out harm, like the things you're talking about, she is talking about designing out harm at source, because we're absolutely right, we're creating these online worlds, and they should be designed in a safe manner, just as we would design clothes for children to not have toxic materials in them. Yeah. We'd hope the spaces they inhibit and like also don't have toxic material. So why didn't we strengthen that in the bill that the opposition passed when they were in power?
I said that before, what we were trying to achieve with the Online Safety Act and why certain things were in it and why they weren't. So I won't want to go over that same material. But I think the consequences of some of these design things are increasingly visible, which is including rising anxiety and low mood, poor sleep, shredded attention spans, cyberbullying that follows children home. Did somebody say it? Certainly.
I'm grateful to the Shadow Minister for giving way. When I was growing up, social media was genuinely social. You would spend your time on it to speak to your peers, to your classmates. I remember MSN Messenger and Facebook when it first arrived. And it's evolved to become this kind of addictive content-driven thing where you're fed information. Does she not think that perhaps we should see a difference between different types of social media, ones that are genuine, peer-to-peer, interactive, that help young people, and those that just feed content to them?
Julia Lopez.
Well, I thank him for that intervention. I went off on a slight sort of nostalgia trip in my own brain, thinking about there was a certain MSN chat rooms and all the rest of it. I think that was a time when people weren't really aware of the power of the internet, and I don't think that potentially some of the predatory behaviours that we subsequently saw started to become very much normalised and industrialised. And I think that whilst it might be tempting to want to try and go back to that place, whether we can actually get there, I don't know. I think it's certainly something that we can aim towards and aspire to. And I think he makes an important point that the essence of social media does not have bad intent. It is the way in which it has been manipulated and changed over the years to amplify negative behaviours that is the problem that we are seeking, I think, to solve here. Certainly.
On the basis of what the honourable member has just said, it sounds like she might actually be supportive of the Liberal Democrat policy, which would be to age-rate social media platforms, and perhaps we would see a new ecosystem of genuine peer-to-peer, lower-harm products that would be a good thing for young people.
Lopez.
Well, we think the priority at the moment is to make sure that under 16s are off harmful social media policy, platforms. But I'm sure that there is space over time for a market to develop where you're not seeing those sorts of negative algorithms and activity, and that there is a world in which new products can be developed that would retain the essence of positive social interaction. Certainly.
Is the Honourable Lady not concerned that if you simply ban a list of social media platforms, that on the one hand you leave the opportunity for new ones to develop, which are a problem, and at the same time you don't allow existing ones to develop in ways that will be less harmful?
Lopez.
the list of functionality.
Oh, right. Sorry, the question was a list of functionality, and I'm sure that is an issue that potentially can be explored as time goes by. And I think it's important to say this is not a moral panic. This is a structural problem. Today, the Leader of the Opposition gathered a panel of grieving parents who had lost their children, where negative online activity had been weaponised with real-world and utterly tragic consequences. Their children have been drawn into dangerous challenges, coercive relationships, bullying and bribery, and they all created despair in those young minds. And it showed us plainly why the pioneer phase must now come to an end, at least where children are concerned. Pioneer societies don't remain lawless forever. Eventually, they are retrofitted with rules and boundaries and protections for the vulnerable. And what is striking is this, Madam Deputy Speaker. After years of the problem building, countries around the world are reaching the same conclusion with remarkable synchronicity. Not because it's fashionable or because governments are copying one another or because anybody thinks this is going to be particularly easy to impose and enforce, but because the evidence has accumulated to the point where denial is no longer credible. If social media were broadly harmless for children, this would not be happening. But governments of very different political traditions are acknowledging the same reality, that when it comes to children, some control must be wrested back. And I suspect that this trend will be reflected vividly in the Chamber today, with examples from across the nation of what is happening in the real world because of that laxity in the online one. Certainly.
I asked her government to ban suicide forums that encourage young people to harm themselves. I asked her government to ban eating disorder forums, which encourage eating disorders, and her government refused to do that. Her government refused to do that in the Online Safety Act, despite us asking for that to happen. How can she stand there now and take a moral high ground on this when they refused to ban the worst, most egregious, most harmful platforms? They don't have a moral high ground on this.
Julia Lopez.
I'm not seeking to occupy a moral high ground. I'm seeking to set forward a way forward in relation to keeping children off social media platforms under the age of 16, because trying to legislate for specific different activities is very challenging. And I think that's what we saw with the Online Safety Act, that there were very good causes, there were very important activities that we sought to try and stop online, but actually turning that into a workable law is a very large challenge. And that's one of the reasons why we think that it's important that you actually take a whole of society approach, which it tries to shift the debate to say that online spaces, certain types of online spaces for people under the age of 16 are simply not appropriate. And I think that that's trying to take a sort of principles-based approach to governing the online world, which tries to steer away from some of these very difficult debates about how you write implementable law to try and stop very nasty and negative behaviour. Certainly.
I do thank the Shadow Minister. She's being very generous, but because I confess that I have not made my mind up on this. If there was a blanket ban that said anybody under the age of 16 was not allowed to access things, how does she see that being enforced? Does that sit with the parents ultimately? And if parents aren't able to, what's the criminal liability on parents? Because there are genuine challenges about what children can access and who you make ultimately responsible for enforcing this very simple approach, but could be quite complex to implement.
No, I would not envisage that parents would be responsible for that. There are mechanisms to make sure that the platforms would be the ones that would not be permitted to provide accounts to under 16-year-olds, and that they would have to have highly effective age assurance techniques. And I've spoken very recently to a major platform who said that they have actually very, very effective techniques in relation to being able to test whether somebody trying to open an account is actually the age that they say they are. I'm afraid I won't take further interventions for a little while, just so that I can make progress. I know that other people will want to speak. Now, there are serious arguments against this approach, and some of them have been heard, and they deserve to be addressed and not dismissed, and we will likely hear further of them today. And those doubts must be listened to respectfully. I hold some of those anxieties and reservations myself. The first is that a ban would be unworkable, that teenagers will find workarounds through VPNs, foreign platforms or fake credentials. And of course they will. Teenagers have always tested boundaries. Fake IDs, sneaky booze, underage rule breaking are traditional parenting challenges. But we do not abandon age limits simply because they are imperfect. We impose them because they change norms, they shift behaviours, and they give parents reinforcement rather than resistance. Of course, a mandatory age limit will not remove every child overnight, but it will remove a critical mass, and that does matter. Now, some fear that such a ban would require de facto compulsory digital ID, undermining anonymity and civil liberties. And that's, again, a concern that must be taken extremely seriously. But as I've just suggested to the honourable gentleman, age verification does not require a single state-mandated digital identity system. Other jurisdictions have explicitly prevented platforms from requiring accredited digital ID and instead mandated multiple verification techniques. Responsibility is placed on the platforms, not on the citizens. And as I say, I was speaking to a major tech platform very recently that set out some of those techniques that can now be used very accurately to assess a user's age. But we must be clear, we do not have a surveillance state simply because 13-year-olds are kept off Facebook. A third argument is that social media provides vital support and connection for many children, particularly those who feel isolated offline. Again, a point that's been made, and that can be true. But it is not an argument for leaving the entire system untouched. This is not about banning the internet. It is not about banning messaging, educational platforms, health support or professional development services. Those spaces can and should remain accessible. Indeed, that is happening in other jurisdictions. This is about a specific category of platforms whose business models depend on maximising attention and emotional arousal and which are demonstrably harmful at scale. Another concern is unintended consequences, that children may be pushed into darker corners of the internet. And these issues do need to be included in the government's consultation when it eventually sees the light of day, particularly whether there needs to be a parental consent required for the downloading of certain apps. But doing nothing already leaves children exposed just in plain sight on platforms that we know are optimised against their well-being. Protection will never be perfect, but neither is inaction benign. Doing nothing is not neutral. It leaves parents despairing, schools firefighting, and children navigating a digital frontier with no one by their side. There's also a broader freedom argument here, which is that by keeping children off adult social media platforms, we can restore freedom to adults online. We no longer need to contort those digital spaces to be universally child-friendly, which is where I think some of the challenges have come in. And finally, this is about leadership, Madam Deputy Speaker. A consultation, as I have said earlier in my speech, a consultation without direction is not leadership. And a consultation that pushes real change 18 months down the line is in truth a decision to do nothing now. Labour MPs know that, which is why the coming moment will not be on this rather nutty Lib Dem takeover attempt, but on the Nash Amendment, when this House will have a clear choice. To accept that the pioneer phase is over, to recognise the sanctity of childhood that deserves clearer rules, to acknowledge that giving parents support is not the same as the state stripping them of their ultimate responsibilities. They must always be the first line of defence. But to conclude, when harm is real and growing, leadership requires a decision, even when the answers are not perfect.
So, as members will know, this debate has to conclude by 7 o'clock. There are slightly more than 10 people bobbing. So I plan to move to the wind-ups at 20 to 7, which should leave you all plenty of time. Dame Onwurah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I am grateful to the Liberal Democrats for bringing this debate on protecting children from online harms. I remain uncertain as to what measures they are proposing. But this is a debate which is happening up and down the country, in homes and at school gates, indeed, wherever people gather. So it is right that we debate it here. If the Conservatives had done something during their critical 14 years of power, our children would be better protected now. But they did not, so it falls to us to take action. And I'm going to speak about 3 things: online platforms, their history and approach, the work of my select committee on algorithms, the work of the Committee on Digital Childhood, all within the context of protecting children from online harms. Now, the key online players range in age from pre-teen, TikTok was founded in 2016, and late 20s. Google was founded in 1998. So in human terms, they are just entering or leaving adolescence, and it shows. Now, honourable members on both sides may have heard me mention that I am an engineer, chartered as it happens, thanks for asking. And my last job was as head of telecoms technology for Ofcom. And I remember meeting with a US platform who shall remain nameless around 2005. And the company executive commented that they had come to the UK from Silicon Valley on a 6-month contract to sort out government affairs and couldn't understand why 2 years later discussions were still ongoing. Didn't we realise government had no role in what they did? I say that to illustrate the tech platform's origins in a libertarian, small/no government tech bro bubble, which has spread globally. TikTok, as a Chinese company, has a different background, but public accountability is not necessarily part of it. And unfortunately for all of us, the Conservative Lib Dem government of 2010 and its successors shared the view that government should not be a part of this, which is why we arrived 20 years later in 2024 without online harms regulation, while at the same time the use of social media and life online had exploded. And that is why I consider the Tory position in this debate a superb example of hypocrisy. Happy to give way.
Monica Harding. Member for giving way. She's making a powerful speech about the evolution of social media platforms. I have 4 children. The first one was born in 2004. The last one in 2011, and they have spanned the evolution of that. 2004 was when Facebook began, and now you had TikTok in 2016. So, but my point is, in the evolution of that, I feel like if it's an industrial revolution, we're at the kind of spinning Jenny stage of it, and AI chatbots are the next destination, and they are terribly dangerous for our children. So we need regulation now of the chatbots, and that should be within the Online Safety Act.
I thank the Honourable Lady for that intervention, because I do agree that AI and chatbots are a further evolution, and I think we should learn from the lack of effective regulation under the Conservatives for the critical evolution period of the internet in how we approach AI. And I do agree with her that AI chatbots should be brought under the regulatory environment of the Online Harms Bill.
Would my honourable friend give way?
I'm happy to give way.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend, the Chair of the Select Committee, is making an excellent speech, and I think her background in this area is really showing in the detail which she's exploring some of the issues. Part of the challenges, I believe, are that for parents ourselves, we're struggling to catch up with this revolution which is gaining speed all the time. And perhaps she wants to highlight some of the challenges that parents face. For me, part of the importance of the consultation is to allow parents to think more deeply about this very difficult issue, where there are often different opinions for campaigners who've experienced this in the most painful way.
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, and it is exactly for that reason that I support a consultation, because this is part of a debate, and we all need to improve our understanding of the impacts of this technology. And parents are in a very difficult position. I don't believe that parents should have to be technology experts in order to give their children the best start in life. But unfortunately, there is so much pressure in the online world that seems to be the case right now, and that is why it is right that government take action and consult in the action it takes. And I think an important part of this evolution is also to remember that when I joined Facebook in 2005, I had to use my university email address to join. So I had to be over 18. 20 years later, 13-year-olds and younger are having their lives and their brains formed by almost uninhibited access to social media. In the UK, social media users went from practically 0 to 4/5 of the population. And having worked with the Molly Rose Foundation, a charity established by the Russell family after their daughter Molly took her own life at the age of 14, following exposure to self-harm content online, having spoken to the bereaved parents of children bullied to death online, having spoken to the Internet Watch Foundation about the horrendous images their staff see of child exploitation, the fact that the Conservatives did nothing in all those years is, in my view, a form of political negligence of the highest order. Now, as part of my committee's inquiry into social media and algorithms, Google, Meta, TikTok and X told us that they accepted their responsibility to be accountable to the British people through Parliament, which I have to say I thought was quite a step forward from previous, utterances and ongoing utterances by some tech billionaires who shall remain nameless. But our inquiry found that our online safety regime should be based on principles that remain sound in the face of technological development. Social media has many important and positive contributions, helping to democratise access to a public voice and connect people far and wide, but it also has significant risks. And those risks can evolve with technology. We spoke about AI as an evolution. And so one of the main failings of the online safety bill is that it regulates particular services rather than establishing principles which remain true and which can be part of a social consensus as technology evolved. And input... I don't have to give her yet.
Thank the Honourable Lady for giving way. She's making an excellent speech. Should one of those principles not only be related to content, but also to the addictive nature of these platforms? Because one of the changes that I've witnessed in social media over time is that quality, the algorithmic addiction, where the greatest minds in the world now are working out the circuitry of our brains and driving content towards us so that we look at the screens longer so they can sell more ads. Is that, will she agree with that?
Really thank the Honourable Member for that intervention, because that is exactly one of the recommendations of our inquiry. Because, as he says, the advertisement-based business models of most social media companies mean that they promote addictive content regardless of authenticity. And this spills out across the entire internet via the unclear, under-regulated digital advertising market, incentivising the creation of content that will perform well on social media, as we saw during the 2024 unrest following the horrendous Southport attacks. So it's not just a social media problem, though. It's a systemic issue that promotes harmful content and undermines public trust. And so the committee identified 5 key principles that we believe are crucial for building public trust and keeping the public safe. And what the first one is public safety. Public safety matters. Hopefully that's not necessary to debate that. The second is that free and safe expression. That's also very important. The third is responsibility for the platforms. So right now they have no legal responsibility for the content they amplify, just to follow their own processes in certain specific cases. Our fourth principle is control, and the fifth and final principle is transparency. So we made detailed recommendations on regulating the advertising-based business models so that the amplification was not incentivized in the way the Honourable Member outlined. We also recommended a right to reset, so the right to remove your data from the algorithm or from any algorithm. Now, the government, and I think our report came out not long before the Minister took his position, but the government accepted all our conclusions, but none of our recommendations. So I urge the government to look again at our recommendations and to consider implementing, or at least consider implementing them, or responding to me as to why they are still not to be implemented. Now, I do welcome the government's recent actions and interventions and its readiness to intervene. And as I said, I think the consultation is really critical. I welcome the desire to promote a consensus, and also that taking the measures to ensure a swift delivery of the consultation conclusions through the children wellbeing in school bills, the consideration of including AI chatbots is really important, and also addressing the risky features risky features in certain models, and of course support for bereaved parents. The committee looks forward to working with the government to try and achieve what are the government's aims. We need evidence to drive policy. And as I have said, regulation based on principles the public can have confidence in. So, certainly.
Thank you for giving way. Just on the point of principles and the point you made around content and responsibility, I worked for Channel 4 before I came into this place, and we were regulated by Ofcom, but Channel 4 was did not create its own content, but was responsible for the editorialisation of that content. Yeah. But it was beholden to certain standards. Do we think that perhaps, would you agree with me, that we should be holding these now not new media companies, these now are legacy media companies, just as responsible for the content that they put out on their platforms as we would any broadcaster?
Onwurah. My honourable friend makes a really important point, and the insight that she brings from her career in the media is critical here. So for many years, and whilst the platforms were sort of just platforms on which other people place content, there was an argument that they should not be regulated, and they did not have a responsibility for the content there. But they are, at the very least, active curators of that content now. They curate the content, and in the way in which algorithms form effective sort of digital twins of individual, and then they drive content, individualized content at people. I think that does require a responsibility, and I do think the time is right, as the committee recommended, to ensure that platforms have responsibility for their commitment. Now, I just want to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Science, Innovation and Technology Select Committee will be holding a one-off session on social media age restrictions on the 11th of March to feed into the government's consultation on measures to keep children safe online, and to hear from the social media companies' progress, if you like, in the last year. And we will also be gauging the strength of the evidence for and against an age-based ban on social media, as well as any evidence relating to proposed alternatives to a ban. In doing so, we will hear from experts and representatives of those with direct experience of harms. We want to hear from both sides of the debate in the UK, and we'll be seeking evidence from Australia on the first few months of the ban, which is already in force there. We will be hearing from major social media and technology companies in a follow-up to our algorithms and misinformation inquiry, and we will ask for their views on the proposed age limits. And finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, the work on social media age restrictions will feed into a larger inquiry we will launch in the coming weeks on the neuroscience of digital childhoods. We want to find out how spending their formative years online affects young people's brains, and what the government should do to protect them from any negative impact. This could cover the impact of social media and other screen time on brain development, behaviour and physical and mental health, whether positive or negative. This could also cover the physiological impact on eye development, the impact on socialisation, and what action governments should take. There is not yet a consensus on there's a consensus on the need to do something, but not on what needs to be done, and that is why we are seeking to provide evidence to support that. Madam Deputy Speaker, I always say to the platform companies that the opposite of regulation is not no regulation, it is bad regulation. More regulation is coming. We have seen several US states, such as California, bringing in new regulation on big tech. The Spanish Prime Minister has called social media a failed state where laws are ignored and crimes are tolerated. There is also the increasingly significant issue of technology sovereignty and whether we are too dependent on foreign companies for our online environment. I call myself a tech evangelist, and I am, but I also know how much an engineer costs. The starting salary of an AI engineer, if you can find one, is well over £100,000 per year. Tech companies are not going to put them to work on protecting and keeping safe our children unless this House puts the right incentives in place. And with all due respect to the Minister and the online safety bill, which he inherited, we do not have them in place now.
Dr. Danny Chambers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This week is Eating Disorder Awareness Week. And so, on that note, I'd like to specifically pay tribute to the amazing staff at Lee House in Winchester, which is an inpatient unit for people with eating disorders, and it cares for Winchester and the people around that area. And we know that eating disorders existed before social media. We also know that they are possibly one of the most serious mental health conditions people can suffer from, and the most frustrating to treat and care for. But we also know that social media is certainly making this more difficult. It's, the body images that young people, teenagers and younger, are being exposed to, the normalization of AI-altered images that are presented as normal and aspirational and impossible to attain is hugely unhealthy. And we also know that AI chatbots, often integrated into social media, are giving people mental health support and advice. And I'm really concerned about reports that patients with eating disorders are managing to get advice on how better to lose weight, or even how to gain access to weight loss drugs, which would make their condition so much worse. And so my reason for bringing this up in this debate is to ensure that the specific problem with AI chatbots, where we know some research has shown that children do not recognise that a chatbot, which is often presented within social media as a companion, a friend, a cartoon character, they do not recognise that this does not have feelings, it is not another person, it does not care for their health and well-being. So it is very possible that with the right regulation, that AI and AI chatbots at some point in the future could provide part of extending mental health care to people in the community. At the moment, we know it is dangerous, it is unregulated, and people are accessing it, are not even aware that the information it is giving them is potentially harmful to their health. This is something that I don't want to fall through the cracks of regulation, whatever we come forward with, whether it's specifically social media, whether it's broadcasting licenses, and it's where they're bringing forward principles rather than either banning or regulating very specific social media platforms or specific chatbots is going to be very unhelpful because of the speed at which these things are developing. And it's a bit like whack-a-mole, because once you regulate one, another one pops up. And I sort of draw everyone's attention to the US Guard Act, which came out last year, which specifically regulates AI chatbots. It very unusually had cross-party support in that very fractious politics in the US at the moment. And what it does is ensure that there is that the chatbots remind the users that they are not a real human and that they are not qualified to give medical advice on a regular basis. It ensures that chatbots are not allowed to provide anyone with sexual content or have sexual discussions or grooming type discussions, and it ensures that they cannot end up believing that they're speaking to a therapist. So I hope that we can ensure that, especially now when we're in Eating Disorder Awareness Week, that can really focus our minds onto the potential dangers of young people believing that a chatbot, which is possibly presented to them as a friend or a cartoon character, is giving them medical advice, or what they believe is medical advice, and it can be hugely harmful to their health. We can, and I would urge this House and the government to move with extreme speed on addressing this problem, because about 2 or 3 years ago, most of the general public hadn't really heard of ChatGPT. Now we hear that around over 50% of professionals use it regularly. Over 1 in 5 people are using it on a daily basis, and 1 in 3 adults have already turned to chatbots for mental health advice or emotional support. Wow. That is a huge and sudden change. It's penetrating our culture, it's penetrating daily use, and we need to make sure we don't look back on this as we did with smoking, where for years we knew the damage that smoking was doing to people. Action wasn't taken, evidence was obfuscated, lawmakers were lobbied, they delayed, and people died needlessly. We need to get ahead of this, and we need to take action as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Emily Darlington.
Madam Deputy Speaker. I just want to start my remarks by saying, absolutely, this week is International Eating Disorder Week, and we really do need to remember the damage and the acceleration that online is doing. We've heard some horrific accounts where the ChatGPT will actually give young people 600 calorie a day diets, which is just appalling. We know the pain that is suffered through seeing images through the hashtag Anna or Thinspiration or the other hashtags that should be absolutely gone from anywhere. And my hope and my pressure on Ofcom at the moment is it is now a Category 1 offence to promote this, and they should be weeding out this content, and it does need to be extended to bots. You are absolute. The member is absolutely right. I also want to thank the honourable member from Newcastle, my honourable friend from Newcastle, the chair of the Select Committee, for her fantastic speech. This is something we have taken very seriously from the very beginning of this parliamentary session, and we have done a lot of work on it, and I would reiterate her recommendation to government ministers that they look again at the recommendations from our algorithms and misinformation, because it goes well beyond misinformation. It goes into how the damage is being done in some of these things. So protecting our young people and children online is extremely important, and the Online Safety Act was an important step forward, but it's not been fully implemented by Ofcom. It's not proactive enough, and is too dependent on what social media companies themselves are telling Ofcom. In the spirit of consultation, which I know we are getting to, I have done my own consultation in Milton Keynes with over 500 14 to 16-year-olds across my constituency of Milton Keynes Central. 91% of 14 to 16-year-olds have a phone. 80% have social media profiles. But what will be surprising to this House is what young people consider social media profiles. We consider it to be Facebook and Instagram. They consider it to be YouTube and Roblox, 2 organisations not covered by the Australian model. 74% of those 14 to 16-year-olds spend 2 to 7 hours online a day. 2 to 7 hours online a day. Now, let me remind you that in that time, the brain development of young women is close to being finished. The brain development for young men is nowhere near it, because their brain development doesn't finish until they're about 25. And we know that from science. This is not an opinion, just to be clear, and it's not a statement, but we know that brain development in young women and young girls happens differently. And therefore, should we have different rules for young women and young girls if we look at young girls and young men? 59% of them have been contacted by strangers. Over a third of that was through roadblocks. Not covered by the Australian social media ban. 33% have been bullied. A third of those were on Roblox. Again, not covered by the Australian ban. So when we talk about the Australian social media ban, which I assume is what the party opposite is talking about when they say they're in favour of the ban, that does not cover YouTube and does not cover Roblox, and it doesn't even look at whether or not the ban is effective. A ban is a blunt tool which essentially raises the flag of surrender to social media platforms. It declares that there's no way of making social media safe. Essentially what they did in the passing of the OSA, the Online Safety Act. They said, oh, we can't go far. We're going to roll back. It's about free speech. No, it's not about free speech, because freedom of speech was written into law in this country and spread around the world. We understand both how to protect free speech and where to limit its harm. It was a missed opportunity and a bill that took 7 years to get through this House, and we do not have 7 years to wait. A ban is also full of unintended consequences. I had the pleasure of meeting Ian Russell the other night, and we had a really powerful discussion, and I can only... My heart reaches out to him as one parent to another of what his family has been through. Yet he doesn't jump to the easy solution of a social media ban. And the Molly Rose Foundation has done a brilliant briefing paper which every MP should read about why they don't. It's not about they don't want the online world to be safe for children. It's that a ban doesn't make it safe.
Would my honourable friend give way on that point?
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My honourable friend is making an excellent speech, and I would like to commend her work in reaching out to young people. I think it sounds absolutely superb, and maybe a lesson to all of us to do exactly that. I'm running a survey myself. She mentioned the Molly Rose Foundation and its work, and I have met with some of their colleagues and discussed that. I also have a family in my own constituency in Reading who suffered a terrible incident. Their son was murdered in an instance of online bullying. They have a different view. Does she agree with me that part of the challenge here is trying to listen to those families? It's so important that we do that properly and just consider the different views as part of the consultation.
I absolutely do, and full sympathy goes to the family and his constituency. It is the worst thing in the world for a parent to lose a child. But we have to get this right, and that's why our consultation is the right way to go, because it's not any good to any child to jump to a conclusion that might not actually protect children. So while I maintain an open mind, my worries about a full ban are incoming now. There are children that rely on social media for connection, often those that are exploring their sexuality, the LGBTQ+, or are neurodivergent, and the consequences to them could be devastating. Could be. We need to consider their views. If young people get around the ban as they are in Australia, they're less likely to report when they see harmful content or are being targeted on social media because they're worried they'll get in trouble for breaking the law. It creates a cliff edge at 16. So no matter their maturity, and we've already talked about the brain development of young women versus young men, or their skills, or what they've been taught, there is a cutoff at 16, all of a sudden it doesn't matter, and they go into a world that is not safe. And younger children don't have their own social media profiles. They're using their parents' devices. And they're often starting with a video of Peppa Pig, and all of a sudden it ends up who knows where. And a ban does not address this. So, what is the solution? As doing nothing is not an option, and I think the whole House can agree on that. Having discussed with experts, parents, and most important... Oh, yes? Sorry.
I was very interested in the honourable member's survey, and I have done my own very unmathematical scientific survey of young people, and all of them seem to want some form of regulation. So, with that in mind, we must hurry up. Would the honourable member agree?
I absolutely do agree. Young people, particularly those in the mid-teenage years, absolutely understand this issue in a way we, I think, sometimes don't, because, quite frankly, our experience online is completely different from theirs. And if you want to test that, open even an app like Pinterest and look at what's being fed into your Pinterest boards versus your child's Pinterest boards. It is completely a different experience. And if you don't have children, ask your younger members of staff. Open the same app on your phone versus their phone, and you will see a completely different world. Yes.
There was a local organisation in my constituency called CyberSafe Scotland, and they did a survey of children about what they were being fed on TikTok. There's a road in my constituency called North Anderson Drive. Children on one side of North Anderson Drive were being fed different content to children on the other side of North Anderson Drive. So it's not just an age thing, it's really specific, and we cannot understand what each individual person is seeing because it's different for everybody.
Emily Darlington.
I think that's a very important point, and this actually points to how sophisticated the technology has gotten. So when we ask companies to take action to stop outcomes, the technology exists to do so. We are not asking them to reinvent the wheel. We're not asking them to change. We're not asking them to come up with new technology. It already exists because they are micro-targeting, even two different sides of the road. So, having discussed with experts, parents, and most importantly, young people themselves, what do I think we need to consider in this? First of all, we need to fully and properly implement the Online Safety Act. That has to be done at speed. That requires nothing in this House. It has been a request of the Secretary of State, a request of the Minister. I would recommend Ofcom get on and do it as quickly as possible. We need to make safe spaces for children online. And how do we do that? Well, part of the answer is ensuring that content is related to the ratings we already understand as parents. And the BBFC ratings are ones we do. I've been asking YouTube what rating is YouTube Kids for about a year now. Is it rated U? Is it 12A? Is it 15? They can't tell me because they don't do it on that basis. Now, as a parent, I want to know before allowing my children on it, because parents have a role in this as well. And all apps should be rated like video games. Roblox has a 9+ rating, which doesn't exist in video game ratings. You see 4+, 9+, these are made up. 9+ rating. 5+ rating. A 9-year-old at my parents' forum that I did after the survey, one of the parents was there and said she walked in on her 9-year-old playing Guns versus Knives. A 9-year-old on an app that's rated 5+. Literally, these ratings on apps mean nothing. Yet we have video game ratings that we understand as parents. Why aren't they used? And should in-app purchases ever be allowed for young children? What is the age at which in-app purchases should be allowed in a game? 3, we need to consider the time limits for the different stages of brain developments. We have guides that are out there recommending to parents 5 a day. Fruit, vegetable, others. We all know that. Schools use the same language. We use the same language. We have nothing to support parents in deciding how long a child should be online at different stages of brain development. And that is something I hope that the evidence that we collect on the Science and Innovation and Tech Committee will help inform. We need to change addictive and radicalising platform algorithms. And in order to protect children from child sexual abuse images, we need to talk to iOS and Android to stop the creation of self-generated child sexual abuse images, and we need to stop end-to-end encryption site from sharing it, because 70 to 80% of child sexual abuse images are self-generated. We need to stop, we have the technology that can do that. And we should always keep the ability to ban in our pockets. But a ban should be for particular apps. We should not ban our children and young people from having an online experience that is good. Thank you.
Vera Hobhouse.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Across the country, the dangerous synthetic drug spice is being brazenly marketed to children over social media. Many vulnerable young people believe they're buying the less harmful, though still illegal, drug THC, only to discover, too late, that what they have been sold is a far more potent and unpredictable substance. In schools, the consequences are already visible. 1 in 6 vapes confiscated from pupils now contains spice. 1 in 6. Walk through parts of our towns and cities and you will see the human cost. Spice users slumped in doorways, trapped in a semi-conscious state, stripped of dignity and control. So how terrifying that this drug is no longer confined to our streets and prisons. It has entered our classrooms. Children are collapsing in school corridors. Some are rushed to intensive care, others begin a battle with addictions that may follow them for life. Spice is not simply another illegal drug. Its extreme potency and addictive grip is a fast track to exploitation and criminality. It is always a tragedy when someone falls victim to substance abuse. But when it is a child, misled, uninformed, and targeted over social media, it is not tragic, it is a profound failure to protect. I have raised this issue in this House and with this government repeatedly over the past year and a half. But in that time, the situation facing vulnerable children has not improved, it has deteriorated. Gone are the days when a young person had to meet a dealer in a dark alley to buy drugs. Today, a child can purchase them from their bedroom with a few taps on a phone. The marketplace has moved online and our children are paying the price. But do not just take my word for it. The Metropolitan Police have warned about children accessing illicit vapes through social media platforms such as Snapchat and Telegram. A recent BBC investigation revealed how effortlessly an illegal vape laced with spice can be purchased over Snapchat. And this is not a few small-scale individuals. We are dealing with a global industrial supply chain with major chemical suppliers in China, providing materials to markets in the UK, EU, the US, and Gulf states. Researchers at the University of Bath have identified nearly 10,000 accounts involved in the supply and distribution of spice, many using TikTok to advertise and communicate. I have met with a number of ministers about this issue, most recently with the Minister for Online Safety, who is in his place, who I know understands the scale of the problem and is sympathetic to our concerns. But words are not enough. We need action. This is already a priority offence under the Online Safety Act. Ofcom has a statutory duty to enforce it, yet despite clear, sustained evidence that these substances are being openly advertised and sold online, we have not seen the decisive enforcement that the law requires. Instead, the burden is falling on members of the public to report these accounts, effectively asking individual citizens to do the regulator's job for them. And what happens when an account is removed? Within hours, a near-identical profile reappears. An account named SpySale1 is reported and taken down, only to resurface as SpySale2, then SpySale3, and so on and so on. The name changes slightly, the branding shifts marginally, but the criminality remains the same. This revolving door of reactive takedowns is not a strategy, it's an admission that the current system is not working. If a shop in Bath were openly selling drugs through its front window, the police would intervene immediately. There would be no hesitation, no suggestion that the public should simply keep reporting it. So why, when the shop front is digital, when the customers are children, are we not treating this with the same seriousness? It is time we confronted the reality. Social media companies have developed incredibly sophisticated algorithms, as we have already heard this afternoon, capable of targeting advertisements to individuals with remarkable precision. They know what we watch, they know what we watch, what we like, what we linger on. So it cannot be beyond their capability to deploy artificial intelligence to detect and prevent the sale of illegal drugs on their platforms. Proactive detection must replace endless reactive reporting. The technology exists, the resources exist, the evidence is overwhelming. What is missing is political will and enforcement. It is time to hold social media companies to account because the safety of our children demands nothing less. I therefore much... Well, I'm just about to continue finishing, but yes.
New friendly intervention. I'm raising this because I know the honourable member from Bath does a lot to champion and support people with eating disorders. I wondered if, completely changing the subject slightly, but whether she thinks the rise of social media and online platforms has had an increased impact in those people with eating disorders.
Well, I thank him for that intervention. I could go on forever about the harm of online harm, particularly on eating disorder. But it is Eating Disorder Awareness Week, and we are having a debate, and I hope he will attend that debate, and then we can raise it there again. Today I'm talking about spice, and I'm talking about the responsibility of social media platforms and how we protect children. I therefore much support the provision to bring in a bill on protecting children from online harms, as proposed by my honourable friend. It is time for action, as I said before. We cannot no longer dither and delay, and I do not accept all the debates around, process this, that and the other. If you really mean it, if you're really serious about this, we need to act now, and I'm pleased that my party is prepared to act and show the public that we want change.
Sam Carling.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And can I commend the Honourable Member for Twickenham on bringing forward the debate today, which I think is a really valuable opportunity to talk about this issue. I also want to thank the many hundreds of my own constituents that have written to me on this from a variety of perspectives. And if I haven't got back to them yet, I will be doing so shortly. Social media has rightly been described as a Wild West, and I come to this debate as someone who has grown up with it, who has had it in my life for all of my life, but who thoroughly dislikes traditional social media, and were it not for the importance of it in my job, would spend very little time looking at it. I think we have to start by clarifying what problem we're trying to solve when we're talking about online harms. The way I see it, there are three main categories. Firstly, harmful online content itself. Algorithms are feeding people things they never asked for, and the evidence that misogynistic and other extreme and deeply wrong content is being pushed on people is overwhelming. Secondly, we have the online grooming of children. Everyone knows how serious an issue that is, particularly on some online gaming platforms aimed at younger children like Roblox, which has been mentioned previously. It is so bad, and the relevant companies' reactions so poor, that there are now vigilantes active on some of these platforms conducting sting operations to catch paedophiles. And appallingly, Roblox responded to one such user who has a YouTube channel under the name Schlep, who got 6 child predators arrested by banning him from their platform and threatening legal action. Clearly we can't encourage vigilantism, but if that is the platform's response when someone is trying to deal with their own failures, something is deeply wrong. There's also the problem of addictive content. This has gotten far worse in recent years with the rise of short-form content and the algorithms which fuel it. Apps like YouTube can, in some circumstances, automatically default to their shorts function when opened to be maximally addictive. And other addictive features are rampant too, like Snapchat streaks, which encourage children to open the app first thing in the morning and last thing at night to keep that going. And as the Honourable Member for Bath has just talked about, there are rampant drug dealing problems on Snapchat. Some of that due to the way it recommends friends to people. There are accounts with the most obvious pseudonyms you can imagine, things like Snell for sale, that is clearly meaning, add this account if you want to buy drugs from someone. And there is so little action being taken on it. And it's not the only platform. Instagram is rampant with it as well. I remember quite recently, actually, I was on Instagram myself and I came across an account that was, again, so clearly selling marijuana-infused food. And I reported it and Instagram did absolutely nothing. So there is a real complacency and lack of willing to act in these companies that we have to deal with. I also ought to reference the rise of AI-generated fake content, designed either to mislead people or keep them hooked through showing fantastical things that don't work in reality. There's also the related issue of faked content more generally, and there are horrendous examples of viral fake cooking recipes that don't work and could cause serious harm to people through encouraging them to, for example, use a microwave in a way that could create something explosive. There are online content creators like Anne Reardon, who is an Australian YouTube creator, that are doing amazing work to call that out and try to educate people. But the platforms don't have their backs, and in many cases are actively undermining their work, because exactly the content they are trying to deal with is what is generating those platforms the most money due to the addictive nature of it. And I was impressed very much with an online video put out by the member for Bangor Aberconwy just the other day, exposing, if memory serves, a situation where people working for an estate agent were going and recording videos in the homes of people who are from ethnic minorities, and then packaging them to look like they're asylum seekers, and going around claiming, look at the great lives asylum seekers have. So I'd encourage anyone to have a look at that video. It's atrocious the way that that's been able to propagate online. I'm so glad that my honourable friend's been able to call that out.
Here.
All of these issues point to a situation which cannot go on. However, like my honourable friend, the member for Milton Keynes Central in front of me, I am concerned that trying to solve those problems in one fell swoop with a ban for young people won't work and could make some of them worse. Young people are incredibly digitally literate and digitally agile, and I'm afraid to say that when a platform becomes unavailable to them, they can rapidly switch to another. In a recent letter, which I was glad to see the Minister mention in his speech, signed by the NSPCC, the Centre of Expertise on Child Sexual Abuse, the Molly Rose Foundation, and a long list of other child safety experts, raised exactly this concern and referred to blanket bans as, and I quote, a blunt response that fails to address the successive shortcomings of tech companies and governments to act decisively and sooner, end of quote. So taking a named platform approach to a ban, in my view, is unworkable. I fear that young people and Ofcom will end up in a perpetual game of whack-a-mole, with children moving to other apps as Ofcom tries to follow and shut them down. And I know which side I'd have my money on in that game. Our regulator is nowhere near quick enough. I spoke in this chamber in March last year about an app I was aware of, others using from when I was a teenager, that functions essentially as a dating app for children, but masquerades as social media. The app I refer to has finally now had its age limit increased to 18, but it took 10 years. And this is not just about Ofcom either. I don't just wish to criticise Ofcom. Regardless of how quickly a regulator moved, I guarantee our country's children would move more quickly. Their digital literacy is far higher than is often given credit for. And that will make it much harder to regulate platforms and deal with the harms. It would likely become easier for groomers to hide and find victims. It will be harder to regulate addictive features. It will be harder to take action on harmful content. And even if this turns out to be less of an issue than I fear, arbitrarily setting the age at 16 just shifts the cliff edge that we already have to deal with. It doesn't teach people to deal with and recognise the problems. And frankly, the problems that social media creates are by no means limited to young people. I talked previously about AI-generated and fake content. It is primarily older people that are struggling to identify that and are not equipped with some of those skills. And blanket bans also risk serious damage, in my view, to children aged 13 to 16, for whom the ability to connect with others online is particularly important. Let me give a very personal example. Around the age of 13, I started to realise that my sexuality wasn't like those around me. I wasn't straight, but I was living in a rural community where there wasn't really anyone else to talk to about that who would understand, and it was made worse by some of my early childhood being immersed in a deeply homophobic religious community. So finding people with similar experiences online to talk to about that and be able to provide mutual support was incredibly valuable for me, as it is for other LGBT people and also for neurodiverse children as well as others. So what do I believe is the solution? We need a functionality-based approach. Through limiting certain functions and features, I am of the view that we can deal with harms without creating a situation where children who are going to seek out ways to connect online regardless of the law move on to less regulated platforms. We should, in my view, look to restrict addictive functionality on those platforms. That might be linked to age, or it might be something we want to consider for people of all ages, because, as I said, it is affecting people of all ages. The explosion of addictive, algorithmically driven short-form content over the past few years, as well as features actively designed to keep people hooked, like Snapchat streaks, provide no discernible benefit to society, and social media companies have proven unwilling to act on that front, so we must. And we need to enforce existing age restrictions much better. We all know plenty of people under 13, which is accepted as the current limit usually, are already using social media platforms that they shouldn't be. And someone, forgive me, but I've forgotten who, mentioned earlier the example of children on their parents' accounts, which is so widespread. It was my honourable friend. And there's a definitional problem about what social media actually is. Are we counting online gaming platforms like Roblox? You can join that from 5 years old. There are ways to prevent children from accessing chat functions, but parents can prevent that for younger children. But with the continuing prevalence of child abusers on the platform, those measures clearly aren't working. So we need to be very clear on what we actually mean by social media because of how much definitions differ. So I'll conclude by saying that I really agree with the government's approach to open a meaningful consultation and national conversation on how we tackle those online harms, where the pitfalls in workability are that we can identify and deal with. And I look forward to engaging with that further alongside my constituents.
Members will have realised that time is knocking on, so they could use as a guide 5 to 6 minutes for their contributions. We should be able to get everybody in. Claire Young.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As a society, we're raising the first generation of children who spend less time outdoors than prisoners. Ministry of Justice guidelines state that all prisoners in the United Kingdom should have a minimum of 1 hour in the fresh air each day, yet research tells us that a worrying number of our children do not meet even that threshold. Not because they're confined by bars and locks, but because they're confined by screens. Astonishingly, the Centre for Social Justice found that up to 800,000 children under the age of 5 are already using social media, and the Association of Play Industries has released a report that highlights just how little children are moving. Their research places adolescent social media use at 3 to 5 hours every single day, a figure that has grown by 50% in under a decade. They socialise through social media, they form their identities through social media, they build their understanding of the world through social media, and what they find there is not a safe or nurturing space. Children on TikTok encounter harmful content every 39 seconds. By the age of 9, 1 in 10 children have already been exposed to pornography. By 11, that figure rises to more than 1 in 4. This is not accidental exposure, it's a predictable consequence of placing children in unregulated digital environments and hoping for the best. And beyond the content itself, the very act of compulsive scrolling is taking a toll. Children are exhibiting the hallmarks of addiction anxiety when separated from their devices, declining attention spans, disrupted sleep, and a growing inability to engage with the world in front of them. Because every hour spent staring at a screen is an hour not spent outside, not spent running, exploring, falling over, getting back up, not spent in the kind of unstructured, unscripted play that builds resilience, creativity, and social intelligence in ways no algorithm can replicate. This was beginning to happen when my own children were young, and at that time, a significant push factor was the fear that children weren't safe roaming freely in the physical world. It is a sad irony that the very social media platforms that are providing an ever-increasing pull factor have created an online environment that puts children at risk of harm. Stranger danger is now online. A 2025 University of Exeter study of 2,500 children aged 7 to 12 found that 34% did not play outdoors at all after school on school days, and 20%, that's 1 in 5, did not play outside on weekends either. So many children don't even get the hour promised to prisoners. The years that children spend outside are crucial. To replace that with an unregulated and harmful social media environment is to actively harm our children. That's why I support stopping under-16s accessing harmful social media, and why it is crucial that we get this right. Getting it right means focusing on reducing harm. A blanket approach risks removing children's access to helpful user-to-user platforms like Childline. And we must also ensure we don't let young people loose at 16 on a wild west of social media without any training in the safer foothills. These are concerns that charities like the NSPCC have raised, and which a film-style age rating would address. It also means ensuring there's flexibility to deal with future developments, such as AI chatbots, which have already been mentioned by a number of members. We've got into this situation because the pace of change in the tech world has far outpaced both our ability to adjust as a society and our legislative processes. That is why I welcome the careful, collaborative approach being put forward. The 643 constituents who have written to me on this issue would expect nothing less.
So, Jan Joseph.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. This is an issue that I have taken close personal interest. I spent my previous 22 years working in mental health services in the NHS. During that time, I have seen a gradual increase of mental health conditions, especially among young people. And I don't want to put it as this is all because of social media. It could be various reasons, like 14 years of austerity and cutting NHS services or closing down the youth hubs. But I believe, and many studies shows that social media has got a role to play in the reason for increase in mental health conditions, mental health illnesses among young people. It's not just because of the online contents, it's also, like as many other members said, it's a screen time that takes away young people's natural interaction, social interaction with the rest of the society. And also particularly the high rates of depression and anxiety caused by cyberbullying and exposure to the dark side of the internet, to which our children have almost totally unfiltered access through the devices in their pockets. I pay tribute to the work that has been done in schools across my Ashford constituency. In my visit to local school, I have seen how effective measures, such as students locking their phones away in sealed pouches at the start of the school day, ensure that mobile phones do not disrupt learning. And some of the studies done locally in those schools shows that the academic work has been improved, their behaviours has improved, especially their attitude towards the teachers and colleagues has improved. Happy to give away.
I thank my honourable friend for giving away. He's making a really important point there about restriction of phone use at schools, and he's particularly talking about pouches. I met Naomi from Dorset Smartphone Free Childhood just last week, and she has concern about pouches because she says it reinforces the idea that a child can have a smartphone at school, but although the access is mediated, it still accepts that a smartphone could be there. She would prefer a brick phone if a child has to take a phone to school. Would he comment on that?
Thanks for that intervention. And what the local study shows that locking away the smartphone, that the students feel like it's not taken away from them. They were still able to hold on to their phone in their pocket, but they were not able to use it. Well, I agree with my honourable friend's suggestion that it may be having a brick phone, maybe also another an option where the children still can make contacts or text messages while they're not able to access the online content. So I think these sort of things need to come out in the consultation, where which works and which does not work. That's why it's important to have that consultation. So as I said, the local studies there showed that have helped improve students' ability to concentrate, learn and socialise during the school day. And they have been welcomed by teachers and by the overwhelming majority of students. Last year I went to see a performance of a play by young people in Kent. The play Generation FOMO explores the impact of smartphone and social media on young people, with a script drawn from interviews with people aged between 10 and 17. It's a powerful and moving piece of work highlighting some of the harms associated with smartphone and social media told by young people themselves. Generation FOMO has been performed in schools across the Kent, and I know it has been incredibly well received by teachers, young people and parents. After seeing the impact the play has had locally, I was delighted to bring the cast to Parliament at the start of January so that they could perform it to the parliamentarians and other policymakers in Westminster. And following that performance, I joined many of my colleagues and written a letter to Prime Minister asking the government to take some steps to look into this area. The letter set out why it should be technology firms, not parents or teachers, who take responsibility for preventing underage access to their platform. So I therefore welcome the government's announcement of a swift consultation on what further measures are needed to keep children safe online. Ministers have been clear that the consultation is not about whether the government will take further action, but about what the next steps should be. So I'm particularly pleased that alongside the formal consultation, the government will run a national conversation to ensure that the views of parents, teachers and young people themselves are placed at the centre of future action. While I want to see the further measures introduced, I believe that to be truly effective, they must be evidence-based. As the consultation takes place, it is right that ministers look at what the other countries, particularly Australia, are doing to protect their children. And some of our members have already mentioned about some of the loopholes or how the children work around. So it will be an opportunity to look what's working there and what is not working there, so that we can get it right from the beginning. In the meantime, the government last week announced immediate action to make the online world safer for children. This includes crackdown on illegal content created by AI, and some of the members talked about AI chat box, where young people and other public have been accessing to get mental health help, which is dangerous. So I just want to make sure that we all want to see our children grow up healthy, confident and safe, and that means ensuring that the digital world they now inhabit is built with their well-being in mind. The actions that have already been announced by this government are welcome, and I look forward to ministers coming back to the House soon with meaningful evidence-based measures that will further strengthen the protections on the platforms that shape so much of young people's lives.
Ms Jarvis.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to start by thanking the hundreds of parents from my constituency who have written to me about this important issue. For too long, tech companies have treated children as data to be mined rather than young people to be protected. We cannot let social media bosses off the hook for the way in which they have normalised harm, prioritised profit and ignored warning signs. We cannot keep allowing them to act with impunity, putting our children at risk, or continue to escape scot-free while the consequences of their business models are borne by families, schools and already overstretched public services. Madam Deputy Speaker, as we have heard, harmful content and addictive algorithms are taking a profound emotional and psychological toll, contributing to rising levels of anxiety, depression and self-harm. The dangers cannot and should not be underestimated. It beggars belief that the tech companies have been able to operate without proper regulation. At the heart of this debate must be the children and young people who have been subjected to appalling online harms. ChatGPT has reportedly given extremely harmful answers to young people experiencing a mental health crisis, while other AI chatbots possess the capabilities to foster intense and unhealthy relationships with vulnerable users and validate dangerous impulses. As we have heard, it has also been reported that ChatGPT and Grok chatbots are advising children with potential eating disorders on dangerous meal plans of just 600 calories a day. This is terrifying. While I recognise the difficulties in policing everything online, will the Minister consider establishing a cross-government approach to ensure mental health support is expanded and to equip public services to respond effectively to social media-related harms? Can the Minister also clarify if Ofcom is being given the resources to meet the scale of the challenge and oversee the rapid evolution of online technologies? I'm going to carry on. My constituent Anne, who is a teacher, told me that she sees the mental health ramifications and the impact on education of mobile phone usage in schools and believes the only way to protect the future of children is to ban their exposure to harmful apps. After meeting with a local head teacher a few weeks ago, I asked the Secretary of State what interim measures the government is considering to help schools manage pupils' access to social media on mobile phones. The Minister stated in her response that phones should not be used in schools, but schools do need support to enforce this. Without stronger enforcement tools, clear national standards and practical support, it will be very difficult for schools to get a grip on social media use during the school day without spending money they simply do not have. We must also be clear-eyed about the potential shortcomings of age verification schemes. Earlier reports from the Australian scheme have highlighted issues around security and privacy. Teenagers can still migrate to smaller apps, borrow credentials or find ways around age verification technology, all of which pose risk to their online safety. Can the Minister confirm that the government's consultation will rigorously examine how systems can be designed to minimise data collection and safeguard the privacy of young people? Social media and online content have changed what it means to be a young person today. One constituent told me that her 11-year-old daughter travels to school every day with fellow pupils, but because those girls have smartphones and like to scroll on the journey, she feels they are not interested in becoming friends with her, resulting in low self-esteem, isolation, and not having local friends. She dreads the emotional impact smartphones will have on her other child when he starts secondary school. Madam Deputy Speaker, the onus should not be on children and young people to protect themselves from online harms. It should be on platforms to prevent it in the first place. Yeah. As long as the owners of tech companies allow harmful materials to flourish, children are essentially being asked to build resilience in environments engineered to expose them to harm. We can teach children about online safety, respect, decency, courtesy, and healthy relationships at home and in the classroom, but that work is actively undermined online by algorithms that reward extreme content and by platforms that are too slow to remove illegal and abusive material. Ofcom should be strong in enforcing clear regulations that protect users. Liberal Democrats were the first to call for a ban on harmful social media, alongside a future-proof film-style age rating system that focuses on the harms platforms pose. The widespread consensus in this House and across the country that something urgently needs to be done to stop children from accessing harmful online content reflects a pressing desire for the government to get a grip of this crisis. We must act now to protect children, hold tech giants to account, and ensure all children are safe online.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. If I can, I will constrain my comments to 3 themes. I want to start with the policy themes, and that's the fact that this has been actually quite a very interesting and wide-ranging debate today. We've heard from many speakers across the House who I think have genuinely articulated some of the heartfelt and thoughtful concerns that all of us have about the way in which social media and its pervasive ways can influence our children, our friends, our families and young people in our society. I am the parent of a 15-year-old. I know what that battle is like, hearing that chirp of a Snapchat going off seconds, it sounds like, some weekends, as my daughter and her friends communicate in the modern way. Understanding what she is doing on Roblox and the game that she is playing and who she might be interacting with, and the other platforms which frankly are alien to me as someone who is past the age where that stuff makes much more sense or of interest. What I worry about is that the simple answer would be to say we should ban it all. Just lock them all away until they're 16 and it'll all be fine and it'll be good. But actually I worry about her walking down the street. I worry about who she's going to meet when she's walking to school. I worry about what her interactions are in the physical world. And simply saying, right, you're in your bedroom until you're 35, which, you know, on occasion we discuss. but keeping them in a house like that is not a solution to those real world problems. Part of it is about how we help young people understand the misinformation and disinformation that they're coming across, and about the way in which we regulate the platforms in the content that they share. The part that we've missed today, I think, in the many, many wonderful contributions from across the House is not just the platforms that share that content, but the creators who make that content in the first place, the people that go online to sow the seeds of hate and division, the homophobic content, the Islamophobic content, the anti-Semitic content that all too often is passed off as criticism of an Israeli government. The fact that we have many far-right commentators in this country that put out toxic masculine culture commentary as though it is a reasoned point of debate. And I do understand when the Conservative Party talk about the free speech, but we've always been a country and a society where it isn't consequence-free speech. There are consequences to the thing that you say and the actions that you do, and that is how we come to a society where we understand what the social norms are. And we seem to have sort of abdicated our responsibility in the online world to that. The second point about it is, and I talked about the 15-year-old I mentioned earlier was in fact my daughter, and she's now given me permission to out her in that sense. But the facilities that I enjoyed when I was in my teens simply don't exist anymore. My daughter's world is as much her online friends and sphere of activity as it is the physical world in which we live. And disconnecting people from that because we think it's unsafe is a disservice to them. I'm also very slightly worried about the impact of the fact that we are soon to legislate, I understand and hope, on a policy which I think will get mainly cross-party support about allowing 16 and 17-year-olds the right to vote. Now, I like to think, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the political literature that I push through letterboxes in my constituencies is of such compelling interest that every young person is going to snatch it from the letterbox to read it, to think that's why I'm going to vote for Gareth at the next election. I'm sure the Lib Dem focuses have the same impact on young people in their constituencies. The reality is young people don't read the direct mails that we send out. They don't read the leaflets we put out, not as much as they should do. And so actually lots of young people derive their information and their news and their views from social media. And if we just say, you know what, we're going to cut it off, where do we force those young people to go to? I'll happily give way to my friend.
I thank my friend for giving way. I haven't mentioned Harlow yet today, so I feel I should. Yeah. When I spoke to some young people in Mark Hall School in my constituency of Harlow, there we go, I've done it, about the potential social media ban, it was really interesting to hear what they had to say. Their view was, we don't care about Facebook, because only old people like us use Facebook, but they wouldn't want us to ban platforms like WhatsApp, for example, which I didn't even think of necessarily as being social media, but I suppose it is. So I wonder, would he agree with me that actually as part of the government's consultation it's really important that we do hear young people's voices to understand their views on this?
Absolutely, and you know, my honourable friend, I understand, was a teacher in a previous career, which and so. But that's exactly right. So for me, when I think of social media, I think of the Twitter account that I have that's dormant and has been for years, my Facebook account, which I use for, you know, the clips in this place that we're all obliged to put out and deal with the comments that come underneath, and my WhatsApp, which, you know, seemingly every political party has to run with, because without it we'd all stop talking to each other. But for my daughter, it is her Snapchat account. And so I now have a Snapchat account with just one friend, which is her, and we use that as our communications when I'm here and she's at home. It does mean that I get the voice notes and the little videos from her, and it's how we communicate and continue to keep our you know, the conversations that we have at the weekends going at the week. And I think we've got to understand that where do we draw the line on some of this? Because the point about the YouTube, the access to YouTube, my daughter will freely use YouTube to help with her homework. My daughter goes to a school where they are an iPad all school. So actually, a lot of their homework is set on iPads. So we're talking about screen time as part of this consultation. There is a genuine thing to think about. We're going to tell you, you can't use your phone. Your phone is the worst possible thing to have. But here is an iPad to look at for 6 hours a day. And if you get stuck on question 6, go to YouTube video 4 and follow through the methodology. And I think we are going to think about what are the points in this discussion where we are on the one hand giving one message and on the other it is an inconsistent approach to how we want. And let's be honest, all of our children, all of the young people we're talking about, the first job they're going to have is going to be based on using AI, using some form of assistant, whether it be co-pilot or whatever, to do the job they do. And it's going to almost entirely depend upon using technology. And so we are going to have to think about how we integrate that sort of future-proofing into whatever regulation that we have. And my final point, Madam Deputy Speaker, is about the procedure. And I'm very sorry to go back to the procedural one, because actually we've had a really good debate this afternoon, an excellent debate, I think. I went to the Public Bill Office. There is no bill that's referenced in here. It's completely blank. I understand the intention of the Liberal Democrats, should this be passed, is that there will be a consensus process to come up and write a bill in the next 2 weeks that we can then debate and pass in one day. As I said earlier, the complex nature of the things that we've heard today, whether it be from the Honourable Gentleman from Winchester, who talked very eloquently about the perils of eating disorders, and the Honourable Lady from Bath, who talked about the ability to sell drugs online, or whether it be the Honourable gentlemen and ladies on my side of the House who have talked about, particularly the Honourable Lady from Milton Keynes Central, that talked about the way in which young people interact. This is going to be a complex piece of legislation. The idea we're going to do a second reading debate in 2 hours and the full committee and third reading stage in 1 day of 2 hours, where there will be amendments and discussions, is simply impractical. So whilst I genuinely hope that the content of the discussions that we've had today will lead to better legislation as part of the national consultation that my honourable friends are leading, to do it in such a truncated way in a single motion on a single day, I think would be bad legislation. Very briefly.
Thank you for giving way. It's not just impractical, it's also anti-democratic, isn't it? Because I think as bills proceed through this place, we get interaction from our constituents. They want to influence how we're thinking, how we're voting. So it's important we have time to discuss these things with our constituents as well as within this chamber.
I agree with the Honourable Gentleman. I wouldn't say it's undemocratic, because, and I'll be very clear, I don't like the principles of opposition taking over the order paper. I didn't like it or vote for it when my party tried to do it. We're in opposition during the Brexit years. I won't be supporting and doing it now. I would say, though, the next time a minister stands up and says we are moving at pace, I might pull my hair out, what's left of it, because what we need is some actual timescales about when things are going to happen. Because otherwise we are going to find ourselves simply talking about this in circles. But I do think that what we've been able to establish today is where the core principles are that we all agree on. That is a good thing, and I hope that when the minister is summarising the debate, he is able to give a little flavour as to when the consultation will start, how we can all get involved. The Honourable Member for Stafford and I are going to be doing events across our 2 constituencies with our colleges to try and make sure that those views are harvested, that fed in, and what is a complex and nuanced issue gets the right hearing it deserves, so we get the legislation right first time.
And we have 3 more speeches left. I'm starting front bench speeches at 20 to, so if we start with a 5-minute time limit. Susan Murray.
Thank you very much. Madam Deputy Speaker, we have all learned that if an online service is free, then we are the product. That's the business model used by the social media giants. They track what we watch, what we click, what we like, what we fear. They then build detailed profiles of our behaviour, and they turn that behaviour into data and advertising revenue. These platforms don't just host content. They actively shape what we see. They promote material, target adverts, keep users online for as long as possible, because the longer we stay, the more money they make. And that is where the problem lies. The algorithms used by social media giants are designed for engagement, not well-being. They feed on outrage, division and shock to keep us scrolling. So users are pushed towards more extreme content, not because it's true, not because it's healthy, but because it's profitable. And we can see the consequences in the real world. Young people in particular are vulnerable as these pipelines of harmful content. Misogynistic and extremist figures, including Andrew Tate, rise to prominence through social media ecosystems that reward provocation and repetition. What starts as healthy curiosity or pushing the boundaries in young people can quickly lead to radicalisation. Given the serious harms caused by under-regulated social media, we have a responsibility to act quickly in a defined timeline to protect children and young people.
On that point, will the Honourable Friend give way? I thank the Honourable Friend for giving way, because last week the CEO of Meta took to stand in Los Angeles as part of a landmark trial examining Instagram's impact on the mental health of young users. And this really highlights the confusion about who is responsible for what in the online space. We know that we need government legislation, but we also need clarity on what social media companies are responsible for. So does my Honourable Friend agree with me that it's time that we establish a clear framework and proper accountability so responsibilities are understood and the right people are held to account for any failings?
I absolutely agree with that, so thank you very much for making that point. It's really important that it is clear who is accountable for the harms that occur. And that's why I urge the government to work with the Liberal Democrats to introduce age ratings for social media. As the Honourable Member for Milton Keynes so clearly laid out, this helps parents and carers to keep children safe. We already accept this in other areas of life. Not every film is suitable for every age group, so we rate it. Not every game is suitable for every child, so we rate it. Social media should be no different. If a platform, unasked, can expose a child to violent content, misogyny, self-harm content, or extremist propaganda, then it must not be treated as if it were harmless by default. This is not about banning social media or saying it has no value. It can be a brilliant tool for learning, as we've heard. It can help people stay in touch with friends and family, again, as we've heard. It can open up access to information, support and communities that people might not otherwise find. But those benefits don't cancel out the harms. We're not trying to get rid of social media, but we must take a sensible approach to ensure that multi-billion-pound companies don't push products that maximise profits while our children pay the price. We regulate risk in other areas. We cannot be beholden to tech giants, and we have a responsibility to regulate here.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. This makes me more frustrated than just about anything else in this place. The level of ignorance and stupidity and hypocrisy there is from so many people in here, specifically about the access for children to social media. The Lib Dems position, I intended fully to support the Lib Dems position, and the longer the Lib Dems spokesperson spoke, the less I wanted to support their position, because I don't believe that the government's position on this is 100% right. I'm glad that they're having a consultation. I do not like the way that they're amending the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, which is a devolved bill, to change the territorial extent of that in order to bring this into scope. A bill which we've not scrutinised because it's a devolved bill, will now have a reserved section in it. It does not apply to Scotland apart from one clause at the moment. Now it will apply to Scotland because it will include this. We've not had the opportunity to scrutinise it and therefore have not been involved in that process. I don't think that it is right that this amendment should come forward in this way. I appreciate why the government is doing it, and that's why I'm asking for the amendment to be shared with us as soon as possible so that we can see it, because we've not had a chance to look at this bill as it's gone along. In terms of the Lib Dems position, again, the Lib Dems have said that they made their position clear. During the Online Safety Act, I can so far find 3 amendments that were put forward by Lib Dems. One of them was put forward by the Lib Dems spokesperson, who asked for, in 12 months' time, an independent evaluation of whether or not more platforms should be subject to child safety duties. The Lib Dems, who are currently accusing the government of kicking the can down the road, despite the fact that they asked for a 12-month evaluation done on an independent basis. There's hardly anything in the Lib Dems' previous positions that makes me understand what their current position is. The Tory party's position is totally incoherent. They refused my amendment on reducing habit-forming and algorithmic features. They refused my amendment on that. They refused my amendments on live streaming. By the way, live streaming had been mentioned before the Minister's Dear Colleague letter. Live streaming had been mentioned 53 times across the 2 houses of this. A third of those mentions were by me. A third of them were me talking about how live streaming for children should be banned. Before today, Roblox had been mentioned 32 times across both houses. 15 of those mentions were me saying Roblox is not a safe platform for children. I am massively in favour of improving the online world for children. I think social media should be about looking at videos of cats. I love videos of cats. They're absolutely brilliant. That's what it should be for. I think it's a great place for children to interact with one another. But I have been making the case, and some other people in this chamber have been making the case, that there are dangers on social media that can easily be tackled by changing the Online Safety Act. Right? We could have got rid of those algorithmic features for children. We could have got rid of live streaming when I put the amendment in for that. We could have got rid of private matching and allowing children access to private messaging features with people that they don't know. We could have got rid of that, which also was an amendment that I put in during the course of the Online Safety Act. I don't like the way this is being done, though, because it's an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill, and then we will have secondary legislation which will possibly amend the Online Safety Act. I'm not 100% clear about how it's going to go. I appreciate that there needs to be a consultation. Previously in this place, before this Parliament, before the 2024 Parliament, there was about 3 people in this entire place who had any grip of what the online world might have been like for children. One of them was the Honourable Member for Newcastle, who talked about some of these things. I asked the Minister about Fortnite whether it would be included in the scope of the Online Safety Act, and the Minister said, if there's text chat in Fortnite, it's an online game, right? There's not enough expertise in this place to ensure it. Much as I hugely appreciate the people that work on writing bills, much as I hugely appreciate the work of some of the experts at Ofcom, they are not experiencing the online world that children are experiencing. That's why we need to listen to ensure that any changes that are made are tackling the most harmful behaviours, are tackling the most harmful places on the internet, are tackling the most harmful functionalities. And I appreciate that the government is trying to take action on this now. However, one of the first things One of the few things that has made me cry in frustration at this place, one of the first things the government did when it came in was put the secondary legislation in order to categorise platforms. It refused to include the small, high-risk platforms that had been added in the House of Lords. It said we are only categorising as Category 1 platforms like Facebook that meet a certain threshold. I was so frustrated by this choice by the government. There needs to be more listening, learning where the actual dangers are and taking action on the actual dangers. Please do it in consultation with those of us who do understand this. Please listen to experts on this.
Caroline Burden.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's clear all of us in here today want to see legislative change to protect our children online. There's no doubt about that. The only debate left is how we do it. And we Liberal Democrats do want to see some urgency, yet more than a month on from when the Secretary of State announced the consultation, we have seen absolutely nothing from the government, and the Minister today failed to answer my question from the dispatch box about when we could expect to see that consultation. Now, given how the government put pressure on the Honourable Member for Whitehaven and Workington to water down his Safer Phones Bill back in 2024, they will forgive me for having little confidence that they are genuinely serious about legislating for this any time soon. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, I think there is a disconnect in our society where we assume that as soon as our children come home through the front door, they're safe from whatever harms exist in the outside world. They can just happily hop onto the computer, boot up the PlayStation, or relax and scroll on their phone. But in reality, the harms that children face online are far more significant, constant and pervasive than any that they face outside in the real world. Children, and particularly vulnerable children, are at greater risk of grooming, seeing something violent or harmful, forming an addiction or damaging their mental or physical health from being online than they are from playing outside. A 2025 survey by Internet Matters found that 2/3 of children say they experience harm online. 1 in 5 had encountered violent content, and over a quarter of children have been contacted by strangers online. And I think it's probably safe to say that there are far more paedophiles sitting in a dark room in their underpants on a screen these days than waiting in the local park for a child to walk by. When Charlie Kirk was shot in the US, children as young as 8 were watching that video within hours here in the UK. And the bottom line is that parents are simply not aware of the dangers that their children are being exposed to online. We've talked a lot in here, some brilliant contributions about the lack of socialising outside, playing outside, the damage to physical and mental health, the impacts on eating disorders, buying drugs online and far more. And I've talked a lot in this House about my belief that we should have a ban on phones in schools, and one of the reasons for that is that the evidence shows where a secondary school has a total ban on schools on having a phone in school or bringing a phone into school, it means that parents of the feeder primary schools are not under pressure to buy their children phones at the age of 10 or 11. They're delaying it till 12, 13, even 14. So we are giving children precious extra years where they can grow up a bit in the real world before they are given a device. And I think every single year counts at that age.
On that point, will she give way?
I don't have a lot of time, but very quickly.
This is exactly what is happening in Tunbridge Wells. The secondary schools in Tunbridge Wells have moved together to make smartphone-free schools, and now the primary schools are talking about it in a conversation with the parents.
I thank the honourable member for his intervention. So the Liberal Democrats are calling on the government to ban harmful social media for under 16-year-olds by introducing age ratings similar to film classifications so that we can rate platforms, and we've talked a lot about this, according to the harm they present. And the member for Milton Keynes Central raised the issue of Roblox, as has my honourable friend behind me. I can't remember her seat. And Roblox is clearly something that we need to be aware of the harms. And our approach would include all user-to-user platforms such as forums and online gaming, including Roblox, to ensure that children are properly protected from harm wherever they are engaging with others online. Now, I just want to say one thing about the importance of the online world to children. Back in 2003, my husband died, and I was a very young widow, and I didn't know any other young widows. And I joined an organisation which had a chat room. So this is back in the dark old days where you had a very static chat room. Some of you are too young to even know what that is. But late at night, when I was on my own, that place was a real lifeline and a real connection for me with other people who'd been through the same tragedy. And my children got to know other children who had lost a parent, who'd been bereaved. And I know that the charity I later became chair of now has forums, online forums, where those bereaved children can speak to each other. Now, you're probably the only kids in your school at age 5 or 6 whose dad has died. So it's really important to be able to have those conversations with other children. You know, we talk a lot about the LGBT community, but I know from my personal experience that my kids would really have benefited from being able to stay in touch with those other kids that they met occasionally on weekends away if they could have chatted to them online. So I absolutely know the value of these online spaces for children. But I also am aware of the danger. Our approach is supported by 42 charities and experts that work with children, violence against women and children, and online safety. We believe it's a really valid proposal. We want everybody to come together in this House. We want to work cross-party. We know we need to legislate, and we want to do this together because we owe it to our children. We are the adults in the room. We have to protect them, and we have to do it now.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to start by saying I've actually been quite shocked at some of the procedural discussion around this for several reasons. The first thing is we're acting like this has just come up recently, even in the House of Commons under this mandate. So there was the member for South Devon mentioned the fact that the Safer Phones Bill was put forward in 2004. As Liberal Democrats, we put forward amendments to change the age of data consent to ban those addictive algorithms. There's also been calls to action on doom scroll caps. We have highlighted the harms on AI chatbots. But yet, we're at a point, and I absolutely respect what the member from North Aberdeen was saying about actually that we have a consultation put forward, but then actually we don't know what is coming from that from the government. That consultation was put forward over a month ago. We still don't know the details, and there are things going through the House of Lords which, again, we don't know the details. At the very least, what we're trying to do as Liberal Democrats is today we gave the space for that discussion, is to say, yes, we need to start putting forward that legislation. If there's another chance to debate that, what is the harm in that? Because this is such a crucial issue. And that brings me to my second point, which is this is not an issue that turned up yesterday, as the member for Newcastle Central was talking about, was that this has been harms that have been happening for years. When it comes to social media, when it comes to Facebook, that's been over 22 years that's been there. We have had, and I'll go on to a little bit more of that in a moment, but also other countries around the world are taking leadership on this and saying that we have to act now. The point being that at the very least a consultation could have been launched earlier. This is not something new in Parliament, of this Parliament, and we're saying actually action needs to be taken. But most importantly, the parents, the children, the experts who are watching this debate, they want to see us taking that issue seriously. And they are watching. But for me, it really is the children and young people at the heart of this. And so, for me, I think back to the first time I met some of the sixth form students at Ashton School in Berkhamsted. And I will never forget sitting around that table with one sixth former, let's call him James today. He told me about his fears about mental health of his friends. He warned about the self-harm that he was seeing amongst his peers that his teachers weren't even aware of, and he talked about the role of social media. A few weeks later, I was pulled to one side at St George's School in Harpenden, where some young women shared with me their concerns about the growing misogyny that was lived out by young men but had started on social media. But since then, I've then carried out a Safer Screens tour of young people where students have talked about brain rot, about seeing the extreme content that the algorithm continues to push to them even when they try and block it, and the member for North West Cambridgeshire talked about that as well. And one of the students said it is as addictive as a drug, and they see the harms of it every day. And so this is the tipping point. And I'm surprised that many members think it isn't. I do think there was a debate of actually highlighting that this is that moment. But parents, teachers, experts, and even young people themselves are crying out for action, and have been for a long time, to tackle the social media giants who have no care for their mental health. And as I said, this tipping point has been years in the making. So Facebook was launched 22 years ago. And indeed, a Netflix documentary from 6 years ago started to highlight the warnings from people who worked worked in tech about social media. And one expert said that it's they're using their psychology against you. And having worked in tech myself, I've read the books, I've received the training of how those social media giants get us hooked. It is really part of what's been built into that. And that awareness has grown, and I'd like to thank organisations like Smartphone Free Childhood, the Health Professionals for Safer Screens, Molly Rose Foundation, Internet Watch Foundation, Online Safety Act Network, and projects like Digital Nutrition Project. And a member for Milton Keynes talked about it being a kind of online diet. There is, that analogy has been made by others, and the work has been to say actually what is the guidance around that. And that's just to name a few who've worked tirelessly to ensure these voices are heard. And I'd also like to thank pupils in my constituency, like from Roundwood Park, St George's, Sir John Laws, Berkhamsted School, Ashlands, and students who have openly shared their experiences, but their hopes and their concerns about the online world. And their concerns are not just about content. As has been mentioned, this is also about addiction. And so let me be clear, like the member for Mid-Dunbartonshire mentioned, the core of this issue is that this is the attention economy. So our children, are the product. It is their attention, their focus, and their time that is being sold to line the pockets of tech billionaires. And as I said, finally governments around the world are taking action. And it's that seatbelt moment where we need to say enough is enough. Member for Stoke-on-Trent talked about actually really trying to get this right, and I respect that. But I often think if we were able to walk down the street and have a kind of 3D version of actually what young people were seeing in their online world, action would have been taken so much sooner. And indeed, the member for Eastleigh talked about holding those tech companies to account. We need to start unpacking what children are seeing and finally take that action. The Online Safety Act has done great work, but it doesn't go far enough. It sets out illegal harms and a code for inappropriate content for over 18s, so children are that over 18s, but not a framework of legal harms or age-appropriate content. And the age of social media of 13 is actually based on data processing, which is managed by the Information Commissioner's Office, and has nothing to do with actually what is age-appropriate in that content. And Dr. Caitlin Reigner, who's the author of Smartphone Nation, talks about how it's reactive and not proactive, and it leaves it up to the user to report problems rather than putting the burden of safety on tech giants. And we must ensure that we build on the OSA and we learn the lessons from Australia. And indeed, the member for Milton Keynes also talked about this, where, for example, in Australia, we see there's a wide definition of social media, which has been left to a small group to decide what's appropriate. But this has meant we have a situation where YouTube has been banned, but YouTube Kids, for under 16s, but YouTube Kids hasn't, with no real framework of why that is, apart from they deem that YouTube Kids should be safer. But we also see that WhatsApp has not been banned, and that is possibly the right thing, but its legislators are left to play then whack-a-mole as new social media apps pop up. And it doesn't give a framework of harm for from AI. I will very briefly give way, because I want to give the Minister time.
On that, it also just bans them holding accounts. It doesn't ban them using any of the platforms. They can still use YouTube, they just can't have an account.
Absolutely, and YouTube is everywhere. It's embedded in almost every website that will have a video. But also, so the member for Aberdeen North asked about AI chatbots. So in the proposals that we've put forward in the Lords, the user-to-user services are the AI chatbots. Now, we highlighted for a long time what the potential harms from AI chatbots are not covered. That is absolutely the case, but Ofcom have clarified that AI chatbots are the user-to-user service. It is the harms, such as AI psychosis, and the member for Winchester alluded to that. It is those harms that are not, and that is why the harms-based approach that we're putting forward is so important. And as the member for Twickenham opened up with, the Liberal Democrats have been leading the work on online safety in Parliament, in this Parliament. We were the first party to push a vote on banning addictive algorithms. We've called for those health warnings and a doom scroll cap. And then today we're calling for a vote about the age of social media and online harms. And we are calling for that ban of harmful social media based on a film-style age rating. And that harms-based approach holds tech companies to account and sets a world-pioneering approach to online standards. And prepares for that future that has already arrived today about AI chatbots and games like Roblox. When it comes to that offline world, which has already been discussed. If you're buying a toy for young children at this point, we would expect you have age ratings, you know it's appropriate, you know that it's safe. When you watch films, there have been age ratings for over 100 years, actually, and yet we haven't had that in the online world. And this harms-based approach is backed by 42 charities and experts who work to protect children, stop violence against women and girls, and make the internet a safer place. But we are also calling for a reset, because enough is enough, including a minimum age of 16 for social media and real accountability for tech companies, but with that age-rated film-style age rating to say we need to make sure that we get the best out of the internet for young people and protect them from those harms. And for me, so it comes back to James, his friends, those young women I spoke to, the young children that I've spoken to around the constituency. We do not have time to waste. That is why we are pushing forward these motions, these bills, because we're calling for action. And I do call on MPs across the House to put children before politics, because we did exactly that in the Lords. The amendment in the Lords, which is a potential blanket ban, we're uncomfortable with that approach. We much prefer ours, but we knew that the future of children came first. And for young people who've spoken out and shared their concerns and horror stories, we must help the next generation to get the best of the online world and protect them from the worst. Thank you.
Minister.
Madam Deputy Speaker, thank you very much indeed. Can I thank the party opposite for securing this debate? I'm slightly disappointed at the way in which it's been done, but I won't concentrate on the procedural issues. But it seems to me the argument is to give the Liberal Democrats freedom of this House to bring a piece of legislation that they want to work on, but have all the answers that would go into that already. And I think the procedural way in which this debate, this really serious debate, has been brought is rather unfortunate. And I think you've seen that through the strength of feeling that's demonstrated in the debate today. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I do reflect on this, that I'm completely and utterly split. The Shadow Secretary of State asked us to give an opinion on what we thought, but I don't really know what's the best thing to do here. I have a 5-year-old girl and a 1-year-old girl, and the jobs that they will do when they're any of our ages have probably not been invented yet, and how I want them to be able to live their lives and exploit and experience and enjoy social media and what new tech has to offer, but I want them to do that safely. So denying them that opportunity might not be the answer, but that's why the consultation is put in place. And I do appreciate that the member for Twickenham, who opened up this debate, mentioned her own children and that daily fight between screen time and online and trying to do something else. I'm sure I had the same fight with my parents to try and turn the television off at night. So this isn't a new battle, but it's a battle that parents will win, I can assure you, whether we're required to negotiate on that or treat them with sweets or something else. But it does highlight the importance of the approach that we are taking, which is allowing for proper consideration of the range of views. And it's urgent. And I've got a whole stack of statistics here, which are incredibly sobering, but actually the statistics are also very contradictory, which is why I think the consultation and national conversation is really important. 99% of 12 to 17-year-olds reported benefits from being online. Half of parents think that the benefits outweigh the risks of their children being on social media, but just 3 in 10 parents think the benefits outweigh the risks. And if you see all of that data, and there's a whole host of data in that context, you think there's a really difficult issue to try and resolve. And then you come to the child sexual exploitation issues and abuse that we have. 41,000 obscene publication offences in December 2024, an 860% increase in a decade. In September 2025, there were 42,000 obscene publication offences, a near 1,000% increase since 2013. 91% of child, I'll just come to you in a second, 91% of child sex abuse material found online is self-generated, often under pressure from manipulation. And let's just be quite clear in this House at this dispatch box, because some of the members in this House who are not present do not actually get this. But it is illegal to create, possess or distribute child sexual abuse images, including those generated that are AI, regardless of whether it depicts a real child or not. It is already against the criminal law, and the Online Safety Act requires in-scope services to assess the risks to the users for child sexual abuse material. That cannot be clearer. I'm very happy to give way.
I'm truly grateful to the Minister for giving way. And of course, he's right. There is all kinds of evidence about online activity. But what's plain and truthful is that academic evidence suggests not only are the risks of the kind that he's just described, the risks of abuse and exploitation and so on, but children's very consciousness is being altered. Their ability to socialise, their ability to learn, their ability to comprehend. So that of itself requires the government to act. For a generation of children are being exploited by heartless tech companies who are careless of the damage they do.
appreciate the right honourable gentleman's intervention, and I'm sorry to upset my honourable friend, but the government are acting. We're acting at pace, but we want to act in the right way. And we have to act in the right way because this is such a complex and serious issue, because it's important. We know it's important that children can seize the opportunities that being online can offer. We heard that from some schools that are iPad only, and parents must be confident. And parents, this is a key issue in terms of parents, must be confident they are safe. We do not want to exclude children from services which are age appropriate or which benefit their well-being. We need to act on the evidence, making sure we strike the right balance between protecting children's safety and well-being and enabling them to use technology in positive and empowering ways. I'm very happy to give way.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Does he share my disappointment that in this debate on child protection, the protection of children from some of the most obscene abuse, not one member of the Reform Party is present?
And the Reform Party want to dismantle the Online Safety Act with all its potential imperfections that we're trying to resolve and get implemented and take this forward through the consultation. They want to scrap it. And I've already said that anybody who thinks that the illegal possession and creation of child sexual images is acceptable under the banner of free speech, it doesn't deserve to be sitting in this House, in my opinion. Let me just run through, Madam Deputy Speaker, because I do only have a few minutes and many people have made some superb contributions. But I do say to the shadow spokesperson, in terms of the contribution she made, I've no idea if she now supports this or not. I don't know if she supports the Online Safety Act. I don't know if she supports taking this forward in terms of a consultation. But we do have to be evidence-led because we share the same thing. We want to keep children safe online. And she politicised the whole issue. It's not contradictory to want your children to have access to social media and benefit from it, but also to protect them. That doesn't seem to me to be contradictory at all. In fact, it's the way in which most members have spoken. Lots of Liberal Democrat members in particular have asked about timelines. Let me just say to you, there's not too many sleeps to go before you'll see the consultation. But crucially, the Government will table amendments to the Children's Wellbeing in Schools Bill to allow us to implement the outcomes of the consultation quickly through secondary legislation within months. So before the summer, as my honourable friend said, there's a primary legislative vehicle there already for us to put the secondary legislation in later. And I do understand the member for Aberdeen North who says they've not scrutinised the legislation. That's the position of the SNP that doesn't scrutinise legislation that is devolved to the Scottish Parliament. But that's the decision that you make, not the decision of this House in terms of its procedures. Can I just mention the chair of the Select Committee and the members of it and thank them and pay tribute to them for all the work that they are doing in this. They are experts in this, and I've enjoyed listening to what they've said, but also in terms of what they're doing. And one of the issues I wanted to raise is the application and advertising that were mentioned by the member for Bath in terms of drugs policy as well. And can I assure you, as our Joint Minister for the Department of Culture, Media and Sport, I chair the Online Advertising Task Force, and that is dealing with these issues and trying to deal with these issues in terms of that online advertising, working with the Home Office in terms of that fraud strategy. So we're trying to make sure that the online advertising space is well regulated and as well looked after as not. The member for Aberdeen North, she's absolutely right to talk about eating disorders and she's absolutely right to talk about suicide. I have heard some absolutely horrific stories, the most unimaginable stories that nobody could even write in their wildest dreams about what's happening online with grooming of some, mainly young girls, mainly from platforms where they're already vulnerable in terms of eating disorders, and that has to be dealt with. Live streaming of suicides is something that is creeping up, and we have to do something about that, and that's what this consultation is about. The member for Winchester raises huge issues in terms of that eating disorders on AI chat. That's why chatbots will be included in the consultation. Milton Keynes Central does a lot of work on this. She's one of the pioneers in here in terms of bringing these issues to the House. Algorithms will be part of the consultation as well. But young people, we do have to see what social media is. Social media to me, as a 50-year-old, is Facebook and WhatsApp. Social media to younger people is not that. In fact, they frown when I talk about Facebook because they think it's old technology like slates and chalks. My honourable friend from North West Cambridgeshire says that the platforms must do better to police themselves, and they do have to do more, and talks about the addictive features, as many honourable friends and honourable members have. Addictive features will be part of the consultation as well, so please do get involved in that consultation. The member for Ashford raises the issue, as many other honourable members did, about mental health and the correlation with mental health. The Department for Health and Social Care has a key role to play in this, and that was mentioned too by the honourable lady from the Liberal Democrats. And in terms of schools, 98% of primary schools and 90% of secondary schools already have policy on no phones in schools, but we're clear the current guidance is not strong enough. and that's why the Department for Education has published updated guidance on the use of mobile phones in schools. And because we want to be as clear as possible to schools, to parents and to young people that phones should not be used in schools, we reserve the right to put that on a statutory footing should we be required to do so. And to my honourable friend from the member for Stoke-on-Trent Central, who uses Snapchat to communicate with his one and only friend on Snapchat, which is his daughter. I hope she doesn't unfriend you after that contribution, or you'll have no... But he's right to talk about the procedural motion in this. This is such a serious debate that we have to make sure we get that right. Let me finish by talking about what many honourable members have mentioned in terms of the international social media ban announcements from previous countries. We recognise the international efforts being made to tackle this challenging issue. Nobody has the right answer as yet, including the recent social media age limit for under-16s in Australia. We're working closely with them. And in closing, Madam Deputy Speaker, protecting children online and ensuring that online life is as fulfilling as their offline is a responsibility that this government takes incredibly seriously. No child should have to navigate unsafe digital spaces or experience negative impacts on their health and well-being, and no parent should feel alone in making decisions to protect and support their children. Please get involved in the consultation, and that's what the consultation is there to give us proper consideration on the most effective ways forward to deal with these problems. It will be short, it will be sharp, it will last for 3 months, and we have a legislative vehicle to take forward the proposals from that.
The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Division, clear the lobby. The question is as on the order paper. As many as are of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. No. Tellers for the ayes, Tessa Munt, Bobby Dean. Tellers for the noes, Nezel, Calix Scan, Taiwo, Owatami. Order.
The ayes to the right, 69. The noes to the left, 279.
The ayes to the right were 69, the noes to the left were 279. So the noes have it, Unlock.